Chapter 501. A Bizarre Situation. Danzo snorted and said, my subordinates in all 4 bases were killed. Do you think an external enemy can locate the exact 4 out of all the hidden bases and kill root ninjas without raising any suspicions at all? Hamura added, I didn't rule out an internal hand in the incident, but blaming someone without any evidence is pointless. Though the signs here point towards Kakashi, Kakashi is someone who knows 1,000 jutsus. Why would he use his signature jutsu? Even if he was forced to, why would he leave such evidence behind? He could have just taken the body with him or changed the nature of the injury to fool us. Instead, everything is precisely set up to blame Kakashi. If anything, it looks like someone tried to set him up to cause an argument between you and Hiruzen. Danzo finally calmed down. Or rather, he was always calm, but had only just shown it. His attention was focused on Hiruzen all the time. He didn't see any flaw in Hiruzen's expressions. He sighed internally and thought, looks like it isn't him after all. However, there is no other clue. Whoever it was, they did a damn good job. Even if Hiruzen is innocent, I can't take this lying down. Otherwise, the root will really be finished. Seeing that Danzo had finally stopped pretending to be angry, Hiruzen said, I'll say it again, Danzo. This incident has nothing to do with me. If you want, you can cross-check Kakashi's mission as well. For now, look for evidence. I'll dispatch 4 Umbu squads to help you out in this regard. Once all evidence is gathered, we will meet in my office. Hamura and Koharu agreed with Hiruzen's decision while Danzo stayed silent. Hiruzen and his guards left. He quickly dispatched 4 Umbu squads who specialized in investigation to investigate this matter. As for the other 3, they stayed to look over the investigation. Though Hiruzen and Danzo's conflict had settled for the time being, all 4 of them were still left with a big question. Who was the one behind this incident? The matter was very serious. If it was done by outside forces, then it was a huge lapse in Konoha defenses. Someone could enter the village without being detected, search the bases without raising any suspicion, and kill 15 root ninjas in one go. The other possibility was the existence of an exceptional spy or a traitor inside Konoha. No matter what it was, they needed to solve the situation before something worse happened. Not a single one of them considered the possibility that this was done merely as a retaliation for a political play. Like every other village, deaths due to political conflicts, though rare, happened in Konoha as well. However, it was always Root eliminating the ones creating trouble for Danzo or Hiruzen. There had never been any incident where someone else had taken the initiative to eliminate root ninjas without root ninjas attacking first. For the next few hours, the investigations continued. However, just like their initial investigation, they came up empty-handed. The only new information they received was from the autopsy of the dead root ninjas. However, there wasn't any useful information in that data either. The 4 of them gathered in Hiruzen's office in the evening. Danzo snorted while looking at Hiruzen with displeasure. The job has been done too cleanly. There isn't any information for us to use. Everyone understood that Danzo was blaming Hiruzen. However, all 3 understood that Danzo had no other choice. They didn't bother pacifying him once again. They stayed quietly in the room while thinking for a while. Unfortunately, none of them could come up with any reasonable explanation. Koharu sighed and muttered, there is just too little information. From what we know, we can only say that a group or a single person who is an expert in lightning release and is a Fuinjutsu Grandmaster was involved. We could lay the blame on Kimobikure, but there is no proof. Hiruzen nodded and added, even if there was proof against them, retaliating won't be easy. More importantly, it'll be a huge danger if the culprit is still inside the village. Very few ninjas in the village will be able to resist an attack from them. Koharu agreed and said, we need to increase the security of the village. We need to deploy all forces to find out whether the culprits are still in the village and how they were able to enter and leave undetected. Fuinjutsu Grandmasters will have to be deployed to find them if they are hiding with the help of a Fuinjutsu Grandmaster. Hiruzen nodded. Danzo said, if they are still in the village, then it'll mean that they are confident of staying hidden from our methods. Even though we should do it, nothing will come from it. I have already sent root ninjas to check the barrier around the village. Hamura, who was quiet until then, suddenly said, I have a feeling that something is off about this matter. A lot doesn't make sense. It immediately attracted everyone's attention. They all had the same feeling as well, but it wasn't something they could act on. Hamura added, I feel like we have overlooked some important aspect, but no matter how hard I think, I can't see anything we might have ignored. I feel that we need to hear the perspective of someone else. It might help us see something that we might have missed. The room fell silent for a few seconds. Soon, everyone silently agreed with Hamura's suggestion. After half a minute, Hiruzen looked towards his guards and said, Call Shikaku and Fujin here. Immediately, 2 Umbu guards disappeared from the room. The 3 elders were surprised. Danzo thought, Suzuki Fujin? Didn't Katsuhiro say that he was missing? Has he returned? Meanwhile, Koharu asked, I can understand Shikaku, but why Suzuki Fujin? Hiruzen answered, the boy has interesting takes on important matters. You already heard his recommendations for the academy. He might surprise us. Regardless, there is no harm. Koharu thought for a bit before nodding. There was indeed no harm. Instead, it provided them with an opportunity to test Fujin. A minute later, Fujin's bell rang. Since he hadn't noticed much commotion the entire day apart from irregular movements by Umbu and Root, Fujin had gone back to training. Fujin immediately activated his chakra field. Surprise appeared on his face as he thought, Hiruzen's Umbu guard? They shouldn't have linked the event to me, or else a single guard wouldn't have come. What does he want? He dispelled his clones and went up. As soon as he opened the door, the Umbu guard said, Lord Hokage has called you. Come with me right away. Fujin nodded and followed him to Hiruzen's office. By the time he reached, Shikaku had already arrived at the office. He looked at Fujin and thought, as I guess something big must have happened. Root and Umbu have been restless all day. I wonder what it is. The Umbu guards closed the door and activated all the seals. Hiruzen said, something terrible happened last night. He filled in Fujin and Shikaku about the killings. Surprise could be seen on both their faces. However, both immediately became serious as Hiruzen said, we brainstormed for a long time, but haven't come up with anything substantial. What do you think about the situation? Both Shikaku and Fujin fell into thought. Shikaku was actually thinking about what the situation could be. On the other hand, Fujin cursed internally. What the hell? They called me to analyze and speculate on the crime I committed? What the hell do I say? Fujin never expected that Hiruzen would ask him for his opinion. He expected the elders, maybe Shikaku, and perhaps a few clan leaders to work on this matter. So, he hadn't thought of an answer. His mind quickly began thinking of what to say and who to blame. Suddenly, his eyes landed on Danzo as he thought, now that I think about it, if Danzo plays this well, he could try and coerce Hiruzen into getting some of his old subordinates back as compensation to stop blaming him and Kakashi. Though it is unlikely that Hiruzen would agree as the accusations are absurd, I'll take this opportunity to add more oil to the fire. I wonder how he would react once he hears my reply. A devious plan immediately formed in Fujin's mind. The more he thought about it, the more he loved his interpretation of the situation. Danzo's bad situation was about to get far worse. Chapter 502, The Hidden Meaning. After some time, Shikaka muttered, whoever is behind this incident is very brave and efficient. At the very least, a rank S ninja who specializes in lightning, a few ninjutsu grandmaster, and a high-level spy are involved. On the surface, all evidence points towards Kakashi. However, anyone with brains can see that this is a setup. As such, due to the involvement of high-level application of lightning, our suspicions fall on Kumobikure. I feel that this is a diversion as well. Whoever is behind this act most likely wants us to blame Kumobikure and for our relationship to sour. I am afraid that the real culprit is someone else. Fujin looked at Shikaku and thought, he can overcomplicate things a lot. Then again, his final conclusion isn't wrong. Fujin hadn't thought of blaming Kumobikure. He knew that Kakashi wouldn't be blamed at the end of the day. As for who gets the blame, he didn't particularly care. Regardless, he found the situation amusing. Hiruzen and the others thought of Shikaku's answer properly. His intelligence was something everyone rated very highly. After a while, Hamura said, a double cover. We hadn't thought of that. It might be the case that the other 3 villages want us to fight with Kumobikure. Still, that doesn't explain who is behind these attacks. Hiruzen looked at Fujin and asked, "What is your view, Fujin?" Fujin answered, "Shikaku's viewpoint is valid, and it might indeed be that the culprits want us to fight against Kumo or other major villages. However, I feel that the culprit might not be from an enemy village, and this might be an inside job." Everyone's eyes widened, especially Danzo's, who thought, "I didn't expect him to support me." Saying that points a finger at Kakashi and Hiruzen. "It looks like you made a mistake calling him here, Hiruzen." At the same time, Hiruzen got slightly worried. Though Fujin was dependable, he had a tendency to put Hiruzen in difficult positions. Hiruzen prayed that this wasn't that time. Fortunately for him, Fujin continued, "It is clear that someone is trying to blame Kakashi. However, the only evidence they left to blame him are injuries caused due to lightning, and an injury that looks like it was made by Chidori. However, even though Chidori is a strong jutsu, it isn't unique by any means. The Reikage can cover his entire body with lightning. He can replicate the effects of Chidori with little effort. It wouldn't be too far-fetched for someone who specializes in lightning to come up with a jutsu that is similar to Chidori. Another crucial point is that every one of you seems to have decided that a spy or a traitor was involved. However, you have overlooked one important aspect. Everyone in the room, including Shikaku, was confused. At first, it seemed like Fujin was suspecting Hiruzen and Kakashi, but he very quickly said the entirely opposite and said that Kakashi had no blame, something that everyone agreed. Yet he said that everyone was overlooking an aspect. Everyone stared at Fujin, who paused for a few seconds to let everyone think and confuse themselves more. Fujin continued, "You seem to have forgotten that we already have traitors. 2 rather strong and ranked as traitors. Though Chidori is strong, it won't be an issue for someone like Orochimaru to create something similar. After all, his expertise in ninjutsu was said to be second only to the Hokage. And that was years ago. Who knows how much stronger he has become since going rogue. On the other hand, anyone with a Sharingan can copy that technique from Kakashi, just like Kakashi copied the other jutsus. That means that Itachi could have done so. Both were a part of the village in the past, and should have known a lot of secrets. Unless you change the locations of the root bases after they left, they can easily locate and eliminate the 15 root ninjas without alerting anyone. It will be a child's play for them to do so." Everyone was surprised. It was true, they hadn't thought of Itachi and Orochimaru. However, there was another minute detail in Fujin's words. The detail that Shikaku, Hamura, and Kohara missed, but Hiruzen and Danzo caught on in an instant. Fujin had said that anyone with a Sharingan could copy Kakashi's technique. Itachi wasn't the only one with a Sharingan. There was another in that very room itself. Fujin's words were a hidden message to make Hiruzen think that Danzo could have copied Kakashi's technique as well. And his words did the job that he intended. Though it was extremely unlikely, the idea that this might have been done by Danzo himself took root in Hiruzen's mind. It was the same as how Danzo couldn't eliminate his suspicions about Hiruzen and Kakashi despite how obvious it was that it was a setup. Coincidentally, Danzo and Hiruzen looked at each other at the same time. As their eyes met, Hiruzen's expression became grim as he thought, though the chance of this is negligible. "Don't tell me that you have fallen this low, Danzo. Don't tell me that you did this just so that you will get a bargaining chip over me to get back the control over the root ninjas I took over after the Uchiha massacre. If this is your scheme, then you are gravely mistaken to think that I would cave. If I find even little proof of your involvement in this matter, I won't go easy on you this time, Danzo. As for gaining anything from this incident, don't even think about it." Having worked together for more than half a century, Danzo immediately understood Hiruzen's thoughts. He knew that blaming Hiruzen and Kakashi wouldn't yield any results. So, he just wanted to apply a lot of pressure on Hiruzen and then give him an opportunity to make things right by getting back his old subordinates. Unfortunately, Fujin's words ruined that idea. Danzo looked at Fujin. Though nothing could be seen on his face, his eye was full of hatred. He cursed, "This damn brat! What the hell is Katsuhiro doing? Why hasn't he made a move yet?" Danzo was very angry and frustrated. While the death of 15 root ninjas was a grave loss, it provided him with an excellent opportunity as well. However, Fujin turned that opportunity into danger as Hiruzen now suspected Danzo. Given Danzo's track record, it was extremely plausible for Danzo to do something like this. Unlike Hiruzen and Danzo, who were fixated on the hidden message in Fujin's words, the others were thinking about Itachi and Orochimaru. Hamura thought, Itachi won't do this. He is too loyal to the village. Even if he isn't anymore, we still have his brother. He won't risk this. But Orochimaru, on the other hand, this is something that he may do. It also feels like his style of doing things. But why would he? Koharu voiced his thoughts and asked, why would Orochimaru or Itachi return to the village and do something like this? Fujin shrugged and replied, how am I supposed to know that? All of you should know them much better than I know. After all, I never interacted with them, while you elders saw them rise from an academy student to deadly rank S ninjas. Fujin's words suddenly made them feel embarrassed. His words were completely true from their point of view. How could he know what they were up to without knowing anything significant about them? Fujin continued, anyway, that's just my thought. I don't see how an enemy village could have inserted a spy at such a high level or force someone at a high level to betray Konoha without alerting Umbu or other special forces in the village. Considering the situation, Orochimaru and Itachi are the most likely culprits behind this incident. Either they are directly involved in the attack, or they could have traded the information. Of course, I can be wrong as it is just a speculation. Shikaku, Hamura, and Koharu nodded. Fujin hadn't provided anything substantial. He just provided another viewpoint that was quite different from theirs and made some sense, but it was still just a speculation. The three of them didn't notice Hiruzen and Danzo being in a different state of mind. Fujin could have noticed, but he chose to ignore it. After all, both were smart enough to get his hidden meaning. The room went silent once again, as everyone except Fujin began thinking about the current situation and how to handle it. Chapter 503, An Opportunity to Establish Prestige in Konoha. Over 5 minutes passed without a word being spoken. Finally, Shikaka said, there is no point in wasting time here. Let's just continue the investigation. If we receive more information, then we could understand the picture better. If we don't, then we will have to plan a bait and hope the culprits fall for it. Otherwise, the only option is waiting until they attack again. Everyone nodded. Hiruzen said, all right, this meeting ends here. I'll assign all available Hyuga, Inuzuka, Yamanaka, and Aburame ninjas to do a blanket search of the entire village. I'll call the clan leaders here and inform them of the situation. Even clan compounds will be investigated. Does anyone have an issue? No one had an issue. Hiruzen looked at Fujin and said, those ninjas won't be able to detect any new structures hidden with the help of high-level seals. Though I can dispatch other grandmasters, their numbers aren't high. Can your clones search through the entire village? Everyone else in the room was surprised by Hiruzen's question. Apart from Shikaku and Fujin, worry appeared on their faces. That also included the Umbu guards. However, before anyone could say anything, Fujin nodded and answered, sure. Hiruzen replied, good. Map out every location that is hidden with the help of seals inside the village. Also, inspect abandoned bases. Keep your main body nearby. I'll inform you when clan compounds can be inspected as well. If possible, inspect a few kilometers outside the village walls as well. Fujin nodded and said, all right, I'll begin. Fujin opened the door and disappeared from the room. Hiruzen looked at Shikaku and instructed, Shikaku, stay in my office. You'll be analyzing all the new information that comes here. He looked at his old friends and said, you three can look over the investigation conducted by the ninjas I will dispatch and ensure that nothing is missed. They nodded and left the room as well, leaving only Shikaku and Hiruzen in the room. The two of them will have to soon pass a lot of orders. Fujin appeared on top of the Hokage building. Though his expression was plain, he was still feeling very weird. He thought, when I decided to kill a few root ninjas to trouble Danzo, I never expected that I would be asked to speculate about the matter and be given the most important task of investigation. It's like a judge asking a murderer who he thought was the murderer, and then ordering the murderer to find the murder weapon and check the places he could be hiding in. The situation is so freaking amusing, and yet I can't laugh. Fujin could only shake his head in disbelief. Though his plan was good, it wasn't supposed to be this good. Even he couldn't understand how things reached this stage. In an instant, 48 shadow clones appeared around Fujin, all instantly dispersed. While Fujin had done plenty of crazy things in the ninja world, be it the riot he caused in the Land of Wind, forcing Rashi to transform, slaughtering Iwa Jounins, or killing Jizo, this was the first time he would be doing something crazy openly in Konoha and allow everyone to know that it was his action. Hiruzen had asked Fujin to investigate every single secret base inside Konoha. That included Umbu bases, root bases, secret bases created by the ninja clans, and anything else that existed inside and just outside the village. It displayed two things. The first was Hiruzen's trust in Fujin. After today, there will be very little that is hidden from Fujin in the village. That is why everyone in Hiruzen's office was surprised and worried. Danzo, for one, didn't want Fujin to gain so much authority. Unfortunately for him, the situation didn't allow him to speak, as it was his root facing the losses. Allowing Fujin to do this displayed how much Hiruzen trusted Fujin. Everyone in Konoha will become aware of this trust. While Hiruzen had planned to let Fujin inspect Konoha earlier, he wasn't planning to let him investigate clan compounds. He changed his mind after Fujin's words helped him realize that Danzo might have been the one behind the entire incident. In a way, it was Fujin's reward. That said, if Hiruzen knew that Fujin was the one behind the incident, who knew what expression he would show? The second aspect that it displayed was Fujin's might. To be able to search through the entire village himself wasn't something an ordinary ninja could do. And considering what he was investigating, everyone in the village would know that Fujin is a grandmaster in Fuinjutsu from that day onwards. While Fujin loved keeping his abilities a secret, too many people already knew about his accomplishments in Fuinjutsu. So, there wasn't any loss in making it public. It also allowed him to establish his prestige and deter anyone like Katsuhiro from making a move against him just for his seat on the council. As his clones moved, Fujin thought, this wasn't the conclusion I had planned for dealing with Katsuhiro. Then again, it isn't bad either. Oh well, whatever. I don't care. If he becomes too much of a problem, I can eliminate him as well. However, I need to be more careful. Once Danzo meets him, he'll know that the root ninjas were eliminated shortly after our meeting. If I kill Katsuhiro inside Konoha, then it'll raise suspicions. However, if I do it outside Konoha, I can remove all traces of his body. Since he suddenly went missing, he could be made a scapegoat to put the current situation's blame on. After all, though lightning isn't his main element, it is still his second strongest one. While Fujin was making even more devious plans, an angry and frustrated Danzo reached the root base. Though nothing could be seen on his face, his mood was terrible. He cursed internally, first I lost more than a third of my subordinates. Then Suzuki Fujin eliminated my opportunity to take back my old subordinates. The situation is terrible no matter how I look at it. He looked at the root ninja next to him and instructed, ask Katsuro to meet me in my office immediately. The root ninja quickly left. Danzo cursed, that useless fellow. It has been over a month since I gave him the idea to go against Fujin. However, he still hasn't done anything despite the suggestion I planted in him. When did he become so useless? Now that Hiruzen has given Fujin such a responsibility, removing him from the council would be 10 times more difficult. Minutes later, Katsuhiro reached the root base and met Danzo. Before he could say anything, Danzo asked, have you put forth the proposal? Katsuhiro was annoyed. First, he made me come here without any notice, and now he demands answers from me? Though I need his help, I am not his subordinate. Though Danzo had influenced Katsuhiro's thoughts with Shursue's Manjikyu Sharingan, he only utilized Katsuhiro's arrogance and belief that he was the best person to represent civilian ninjas and put him against Fujin. He didn't use the Manjikyu to make Katsuhiro loyal to him, as it would have raised suspicions. So, Katsuhiro wasn't loyal to Danzo, nor was he his subordinate. Danzo was using his wit to keep him in line. Unfortunately, Danzo's situation had become very bad, forcing him to lose patience. Katsuhiro replied, I met with Fujin yesterday and put forth the proposal. He has asked me to draft the proposal, and he will present it to the council while giving me the credit. I am currently working on it. The boy is still too green. You don't need to worry too much about him or make complicated schemes. I'll take his seat in the council in no time. As he said, Katsuhiro thought, I still need his vote for joining the council. I'll endure this attitude for now. Unlike Katsuhiro, Danzo's thoughts were the exact opposite. He was stunned to hear what Katsuhiro had said. He thought, he gave him credit so easily? No, it isn't right. How can someone Hiruzen chose to join the council so early be so open-minded? He must have seen through my scheme. As long as he says that this proposal was put forth by Katsuhiro and doesn't try to force it on the council, the clan leaders will be vigilant against Katsuhiro and not Fujin. They will have no reason to vote him out. And since he isn't stealing any credit, I can't defame him. Such a crafty kid. The only thing I can do is ruin his reputation among civilian ninjas. That said, will he be affected by public opinion? Danzo couldn't be sure. Fujin openly hung around and guided someone like Naruto, who was a social pariah and probably the most disliked person in Konoha. It showed that Fujin didn't care much about his reputation. Seeing that Danzo was lost in thought, Katsuhiro asked, "Why did you call me here?" Danzo looked at it and replied, "Just to ask for your progress with the proposal. You can leave." Katsuhiro was annoyed at being called for such a small matter. He left the root base without exchanging any pleasantries. Danzo didn't mind that. He had more important things to think about. He thought, Suzuki Fujin? Something about this boy is awfully off. But I can't put my finger on what exactly is off. Chapter 504. Danzo's Suspicion. Danzo recalled all his interactions with Fujin. When he first got my interest, Hiruzen refused to let me induct him in the root. That wasn't too odd considering Hiruzen's nature. However, there is no explanation as to why Fujin was so on guard when I met him. Even in the council meeting, he opposed me and even challenged Root to a fight to prove his point. The 2 Root ninjas I sent after him mysteriously vanished. And today, his words caused Hiruzen to suspect me of something I haven't done and put me in a terrible position. I have only suffered losses due to this boy. Not to mention, why is his house covered in so many seals? I felt that it was just a trap to lure me into making a mistake, but the more I find out about this boy, the more I feel that something about him is horribly wrong. Even this incident, I manipulated Katsuhiro into making a move against him. Yet he somehow managed to stall Katsuhiro for over 5 weeks. And the day he met Katsuhiro, 15 of Root ninjas died. It was as if this was a retaliation for me manipulating Katsuhiro into making a move against him. It's just that there is a lot of information I am missing. Why was he so on guard against me? Why would he eliminate any Root ninjas following him? How could he link Katsuhiro's actions to me? And how could he, someone who has no history of using lightning, kill 15 ninjas with lightning jutsus and replicate a high-level jutsu like Chidori? Danzo had no answer to any of his questions. In fact, he couldn't even make an educated guess, as there was no information relevant to those questions. It was why Danzo wasn't sure whether what he thought was true or not. In fact, even he found his analysis to be completely absurd. There wasn't even a hint of proof that Fujin did any of that. If he were to tell it to someone else, they would look at him like something was wrong with his brain. Yet he couldn't get rid of the feeling that something about Fujin was odd. Danzo decided, I need to put him under surveillance once again. The only issue is that he is extremely careful. Nothing inside his house can be spied upon. Even in his training ground, he is extremely careful. Even bugs can't enter undetected. The last time I spied on him, I didn't find anything substantial on him. Unlike others in the village, I can't threaten the ones close to him either. He is an orphan and mostly stays by himself. The few people he could be considered friends with are quite strong or well-connected as well. There is very little I can do against him. Danzo was troubled. He had made up his mind to act, however. His options were extremely limited and without much hope. Though they lived in a deadly world of ninjas, even ninjas had weaknesses and Danzo specialized in exploiting those. However, Fujin had none. Danzo couldn't help but mutter, I now see why you compared him to Sensei. He's almost a perfect ninja. He might be the toughest opponent I faced. Yet, I can't even be sure if he is facing me or whether this is all in my head. While Danzo was in a dilemma and wondering what he should do, be it about Fujin or his dead subordinates, he suddenly heard a commotion. He stopped thinking and looked in the direction of one of the entrances to the Root headquarters. At the entrance of the base, two Root ninjas stood extremely alert, as if they were facing an enemy. One of them asked, Suzuki Fujin, "Why are you trying to enter the Root headquarters unauthorized?" Fujin's clone replied, "Unauthorized? Lord Hokage has ordered me to inspect every base in the village." Even Elder Danzo didn't oppose him. "Stop blocking me, or else I'll be forced to apprehend you too before searching the base." The two Root ninjas grew tense. Unlike others in Konoha, Root ninjas were well aware of how difficult Fujin was to deal with. Suddenly, Danzo's figure appeared behind them and asked, "What is happening here?" The Root ninjas were relieved to see that Danzo had appeared. Before they could say anything, Fujin's clone said, "It's good to see you, Elder Danzo. These two were stopping me from doing the task Lord Hokage assigned me." Danzo's expression grew dark as he realized, he wants to search the Root headquarters? Have I fallen so much that even a kid wants to disrespect me so much? Fujin's clone observed Danzo's reaction carefully. Though not much could be observed, he could clearly see how provoked Danzo was. He chuckled internally and thought, "Do you have the sole right of creating trouble for others? Let me see how much you can endure, Danzo. Once you make one mistake, I'll let you know how it feels to be on the receiving end for once." While Fujin's plan of creating trouble and distraction for Danzo worked excellently, Fujin realized that Danzo might still target him if connected his meeting with Katsuhiro and the death of his subordinates happening the same day with each other. If so, he would trouble Fujin once again. Since that was the case, Fujin decided to provoke him right away. The last time Fujin provoked Danzo, he didn't receive much of a response from him. If that happened once again, Fujin would be glad as he won't face much trouble. If Danzo acted the opposite, Fujin wouldn't mind that either. It was a good opportunity to have his Akuro identity break loose for real. Though it would increase Danzo's suspicion, it would be pointless as he would already be suspecting Fujin and he would still not have any evidence. Facing Fujin's clone, Danzo said, "The reason why Hiruzen asked you to investigate is because the number of grandmasters is low. I have already inspected this base. You don't need to waste your time here." Fujin's clone asked nonchalantly, "Are you sure you don't want me to take a second look, Elder Danzo?" Danzo replied, "I am sure." Fujin's clone said, "All right. I'll report to Lord Hokage that you have taken the responsibility of inspecting this base." Fujin's clone disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Immediately, Danzo's expression became very ugly. Even his Root subordinates could see how infuriated he was. He cursed internally, such arrogance. "I can't remember the last time I felt so insulted." Danzo's anger wasn't unjust. Even though some opposed his methods, it was a fact that he was highly respected due to his strength, cunningness, and position. Ever since the end of the First Great Ninja War, he couldn't recall any instance of being so humiliated. If there was any such incident that was even more humiliating, then that would be Tobirama appointing Hiruzen as the third Hokage before his death. Danzo turned around without speaking to his subordinates. He walked over to Torian and ordered, "Once Suzuki Fujin is done with his search, you will keep an eye on him. Take 4 Root ninjas with you." Torian was surprised. He asked, "But Lord Danzo, the killer is still roaming free. Would it be wise to disperse our forces secretly?" Torian wasn't concerned about his death, but losing 5 more capable ninjas would be a deadly blow for Root. Danzo shook his head and said, "If an attack happens to you while you are spying on him, he'll sense it and will be forced to help you out. It might be a good way of luring the attacker." Torian was surprised by the logic. However, on thinking about it, it was completely sound. Fujin couldn't stand by if a fight broke out in the village. Torian asked, "What will we be spying for?" Danzo answered, "Nothing specific. He seems clean on the surface, but I have suspicions that he is involved in this incident somehow. Keep an eye on him and see if there is something off about him. If my intuition is accurate, then we will save Konoha from a great tragedy in the future." Torian was surprised by how serious Danzo was. He immediately said, "All right, I'll start spying on him as soon as he is done scanning the village." Danzo nodded and left. On top of the Hokage building, Fujin received the memories of his clone, and a smile appeared on his face. He opened his eyes and looked towards the location of the root base. He thought, just like the Umbu headquarters, the root headquarters is big as well. Unlike the 4 auxiliary bases I targeted the previous night, the main base is huge. There are several underground floors in the base. Seeing what all he is scheming in those underground bases would have been interesting. Though I've been in the Umbu, I still never saw that Sakai clan Jounin we captured after becoming Chunits. If she is still alive, then I suspect she is being kept in the root headquarters. I wonder what else is hidden there, and how much Hiruzen knows. Chapter 505. Reasons to not use shadow clones. While Fujin and Danzo had their little confrontation, Hiruzen met with the clan leaders and informed them of the situation. While they were displeased about their clan compounds being searched, no one opposed Hiruzen. After all, if someone who could silently eliminate 15 root ninjas hid in their clan compounds or secret bases, then their entire clan could be in danger. Without any restrictions, Fujin's clones searched the entire village methodically. Needless to say, it was all an act. With his space-time sensing technique, there wasn't much that could hide from him anyway. Not to mention, the culprit was him. How would he find anyone else? He merely took the opportunity to check out all the secret bases inside Konoha and left the Flying Thunder God mark secretly whenever he could. He had already put thousands of marks inside the village. However, now he could truly claim that he had marked the entire village. Once his range increased, he could appear almost anywhere inside the village. Unless the village was destroyed, Fujin could soon be considered as invincible inside Konoha. Of course, his search wasn't entirely unrestricted. While the clans didn't stop him like Danzo, their ninjas still followed him when he inspected their clan compounds or secret bases. As such, his clones couldn't brazenly mark every place there. Regardless, he was long satisfied with what he had done. After all, these were unintended benefits of his move against Danzo. Besides, this search had become common knowledge among the ninjas. Almost every clan ninja became aware of such a search despite not knowing the reason behind the search. A few civilian ninjas noticed as well. The ones who didn't notice would soon come to know of it from their friends who were a part of ninja clans. Within a few days, the fact that Fujin could sustain dozens of shadow clones for hours and his grandmaster attainment in Fuinjutsu would be known to every ninja in Konoha. One of those civilian ninjas was Katsuhiro. He was dumbfounded by what he had discovered. He immediately realized, so this is why Danzo seemed so annoyed. How did he suddenly get the authority to do something like this? Shit, if he is a grandmaster in Fuinjutsu, then taking a seat will be extremely difficult. Everyone wants to have a good relationship with a Fuinjutsu grandmaster. However, how did he become a grandmaster out of nowhere? I didn't even know that he was a seal master, let alone a grandmaster. What do I do now? Needless to say, the spies would learn of this as well. However, seeing how tense Konoha was, they didn't dare to send messages until things calmed down. The search continued the entire evening, continued throughout the night, and only ended around late in the afternoon the next day. Fujin was long done with his part, but he still needed to coordinate with the ninjas specializing in sensing and detection to ensure that there wasn't anyone hiding in the village. While they couldn't find any culprits for obvious reasons, they did find a few spies who were hiding in the Konoha pretending to be civilians. It ensured that the torture and interrogation department in Konoha would have fun for a few days. In the Hokage office, there were several people, including Fujin. Hiruzen and Shikaku were busy going through all the information gathered in case they noticed something others might have missed. The leaders of the sensing team were making reports as well. As for Fujin, he was just sitting on one side of the room, watching everyone work so hard to find the person sitting in that very room. He looked at Hiruzen and Shikaku and thought, while Danzo might be the most tense one, seeing these two lazy fellows work their ass off is a decent benefit as well. Just look at their tired and exhausted expressions. Even under these circumstances, the two of them don't stop acting. Fujin couldn't help but admire the two of them. He thought, all this work can easily be done within a few minutes by spamming shadow clones. Both have more than enough chakra to do so. As for their intelligence, they are probably the smartest people I have met. There is no way either of them can't think of this. Instead, they just don't do it. If they did it even once, others will ask why they don't do it every time. Once they begin doing it every time, everyone will see how much more free time they have. Then, they'll just pile more work on them. In essence, their workload will increase several times, and the amount of time they have to work will stay the same. No wonder they are this adamant about not using the shadow clone jutsu inside this building. Now that I think about it, Tsunade probably did the same as well. She could use paperwork as a reason to be annoyed and shoo away anyone who'd come to trouble her needlessly. After all, who would want to mess with her when she is in a bad mood? I need to learn from them as well. This time, the benefits were very high, so it's fine. Next time, I should avoid using shadow clones for such tasks. Though I can handle it, it'll be annoying if it gets requested too many times. The work in the office continued for another 3 hours. Fujin's job was just to map the locations hidden with seals. He was long done with it. Hiruzen just made him stay in case he noticed any discrepancy in the information reported by the sensors. Once all the data was looked through, Shikaka sighed and muttered, "There are no traces at all. We didn't find any new base. The abandoned bases don't have any traces of someone staying there. Even scent isn't present. Whoever it was, they did a thorough job. Only Fujin, Shikaku, Hiruzen, and the Umbu guards were still in the room. The rest had left. Hiruzen sighed as well and said, "Yeah, there is nothing. The job is too clean." His expression became serious as he muttered, "The attacker was so thorough that it in itself is suspicious." Shikaku agreed with Hiruzen's words, but didn't voice his opinion. He thought, "Looks like he is already suspecting someone." Needless to say, Hiruzen was suspecting Danzo. However, just like Danzo, he too could see some issues. He thought, it is likely that only someone like Danzo can do something like this. An enemy village, or even Orochimaru, doing any of this will leave some clues. But, with Danzo's expertise, it wouldn't have been an issue for him to plant some evidence to divert my attention elsewhere. Why didn't he do that? He couldn't think of a reason. Seeing the two of them in thought, Fujin yawned and said, "I haven't slept for nearly 2 days. Also, using that many clones is giving me plenty of headaches. I'll take my leave for now. Call me if you two need anything." Hiruzen nodded and said, "Good work in the past couple of days. You can leave." Fujin nodded and disappeared from the room. Meanwhile, Shikaka wondered, was he really tired or was he taking clues from us? Such a troublesome youngster. Fujin returned to his house after flickering a few times. He activated his space-time sensing technique, and surprisingly, there was no one around keeping an eye on his house. He wondered, did Danzo decide to not confront me? Or is he planning to attack in some other way? Oh well, I'll handle it when the time comes. While Fujin learned from the two of them, he was indeed quite sleepy. He hadn't consumed any soldier pills this time. He quickly entered his house, cleaned up, and fell asleep. While the village was quite tense, Fujin didn't have a reason to worry. Unfortunately, his speculation wasn't correct. An hour after he fell asleep, 5 root ninjas led by Torian began spying on his house. Since none of them used chakra or stared at the house for too long, and they stayed quite a long distance away, the seals on his house didn't pick up anything. After all, Torian had tried spying on Fujin earlier. He knew how crazy his house was. All root ninjas knew that the real spying would only be conducted when Fujin wasn't in his house. Since he slept quite early, Fujin woke up early as well. It had only been 3 a.m. when he woke up. He stretched and was about to go freshen up when he activated his space-time sensing technique out of habit. Suddenly, all the laziness disappeared as his eyes became serious. Chapter 506, Explosion. A hint of craziness appeared in Fujin's eyes, and a smile appeared on his face as he thought. You made your move after all, Danzo. Good. Now, let me see whether you are skillful enough to ensure that the root survives." While the root ninjas were skillful enough to hide from chakra fields even when someone as skilled as Fujin used it, they had no idea about Fujin's other skill. Even Danzo was completely unaware. He never imagined that the spies he sent would be detected in an instant. If he knew Fujin had such an ability, he wouldn't have bothered sending anyone to spy on him. Even if Fujin didn't retaliate, the spies would only see what Fujin wanted to show them, which could make the root fall into a trap. Unfortunately for Danzo, Fujin no longer had intentions to keep playing games. He planned to use this opportunity to completely escalate the situation. On this day, two events would happen that would send shockwaves throughout Konoha that would be remembered for quite some time. One of them would also bring back some unpleasant memories. Fujin fell back into his bed. Sleep had recovered most of his chakra, but he was still not at full capacity. It was understandable as he had maintained a lot of shadow clones. However, in this circumstance, that was a good thing. A shadow clone, with 20% of his maximum chakra, appeared next to his bed. Without a word, he disguised himself perfectly and disappeared from the room. Neither of the 5 root ninjas around Fujin's house detected the shadow clone leaving from under the ground. There were 2 main reasons for this. Firstly, the root ninjas didn't dare to openly activate their chakra fields. Secondly, Fujin's methods of hiding chakra were extremely good, and his clone left through a place where none of those 5 were present. Minutes later, Fujin's clone reached the outskirts of the root headquarters. He thought, yesterday I showed up at the front door. However, with a base this huge, I have innumerable ways of entering. Even though this base is very well hidden and protected with seals, Root currently lacks the manpower to defend its main headquarters. Of course, it is also because they don't expect to be attacked in the first place. After all, Konoha will be the one to take the hit first before any attacker reaches the Root headquarters. Danzo had only 26 Root ninjas left after Fujin's stunt 2 nights ago. Out of those, 5 were outside Fujin's house, while another 5 were outside the village training the kids from the Land of Water in a secret location. In addition, 2 were deployed in the Fire Capital, 1 always followed Naruto, and 1 was hiding in the Umbu. As a result, the massive Root headquarters had only 12 Root ninjas along with Danzo. Even among them, 5 of the Root ninjas were in the underground laboratories at the lowest 2 levels of Root headquarters, meaning that only 7 were available to keep an eye on their base. Hence, they couldn't pay attention to every entry into the Root headquarters. Of course, Danzo had long sealed up such entry points. Fujin's clone was standing in front of one such sealed entry point. The clone's eyes glowed as he began studying the seals. He nodded as he realized, not bad. Even I will need some time to decode these seals and enter inside without being detected. Not to mention, there are some seals I don't recognize. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to study them slowly. Oh well, even if I did, they would detect me in no time. So, no need to bother with stealth. The blade of the Thunder Spirit appeared in his right hand, but the hilt was covered by his long sleeves. The shape of the blade looked nothing like a sword and instead looked like a ball of lightning. In an instant, nearly 35% of the clone's chakra was transformed into lightning and transferred into the lightning ball. Such a massive chakra spike just outside the Root headquarters was picked up by the seals. A couple of sensors and Danzo also felt it. Danzo thought, what the hell? He immediately made a hand seal to activate all defensive seals on the Root headquarters. Unfortunately, he wasn't fast enough. Fujin's clone kicked the seal entrance, smashing it apart before the seals could activate. Immediately, the 5 Root ninjas in the laboratories activated the defenses to ensure that the labs would stay safe. The 2 who were with Danzo got on alert to protect Danzo. As for the remaining 5, they ran towards where Fujin's clone had barged in from. Unfortunately for them, those few seconds were all that Fujin's clone needed to supercharge the lightning ball with almost 99% of his chakra. As soon as 3 Root ninjas appeared, he waved his right arm in a slashing action, unleashing all the lightning stored inside the blade of the Thunder Spirit. Lightning release. Lightning flood jutsu. The Root ninjas who had just arrived were shocked. While they came prepared for war, none of them expected to face such a devastating attack, even before they could properly see the intruder. What shocked them more was the massive quantity of chakra they were feeling from the incoming attack despite not being a sensor. Fujin's clone had supercharged the jutsu with almost his entire chakra. That was 20% of Fujin's chakra. However, with the amplification from the blade of the Thunder Spirit, the attack was equivalent to 200% of Fujin's chakra. It was important to know that Fujin's chakra reserves were almost at the same level as Hiruzen's. Though Hiruzen's chakra reserves had deteriorated with age, he was still a formidable ninja, and his place in the rank S tier was unshaken. Very few ninjas had chakra reserves exceeding his. As for the ninjas that had chakra twice as much as him, they could be counted on one hand if the Jinchurikis weren't considered. And even they would never use up all their chakra in a single attack. What the Jounin level Anbu were facing was an attack at a level rarely seen in the ninja world. The 3 root ninjas, as well as the 2 who weren't too far away, were hit by the lightning within the blink of an eye. They didn't even have a chance to put up a defense and were obliterated within moments. Though Danzo had failed to activate the seals on the sealed entrance in time, he activated the remaining seals in the headquarters. As a result, the entire base became very resilient. Every wall could endure a couple of rank 8 jutsus before crumbling. Unfortunately for Danzo, lightning specialized in penetrating through obstacles like walls. And the attack could be considered a peak rank S jutsu in terms of pure destruction. The lightning immediately began spreading throughout the root headquarters. Fujin's jutsu was a variation of the lightning release, false darkness jutsu, and was quite similar to it. The only difference was the amount of chakra infused in the jutsu, which caused the nature of the jutsu to change. This change could be seen in the root headquarters. If a bystander had spectated this scene, it would seem like there was a lightning flood inside root headquarters, spreading in every direction and piercing through every obstacle. It was a scene from a nightmare. In his office, Danzo's eyes widened in shock and disbelief as he sensed the amount of chakra in the attack and how easily his base was being destroyed. Standing next to him, Yamanaka Fu nervously said, "Lord Danzo." Despite being an elite jounin, Fu had no confidence in being able to resist the incoming attack. Danzo immediately weaved hand seals while saying, "Move behind me." Wind release. Serial vacuum waves jutsu immediately. Fu and the other root ninja moved behind Danzo. At the very instance when Danzo was done weaving the hand seals, the lightning broke through his office walls and moved towards him when he exhaled his jutsu. Several vacuum waves hit the incoming lightning flood continuously and kept bombarding the incoming attack for a few seconds. The lightning headed towards Danzo was finally stopped. Only some lightning charges made it through the intense wind and hit the 3 of them. They weren't strong enough to cause them any damage. Danzo and the 2 root ninjas with him were safe. However, their moods were anything but calm. Even Danzo was extremely tense. He thought, "Fortunately, the lightning wasn't all concentrated on me. Otherwise, I would have no chance of stopping it without using wood release or sacrificing Shirsue's eye by using his Anaji. I didn't even have time to remove the seals on my right arm. Which crazy bastard attacked my base? And who is strong enough to unleash such an attack? Even Hiruzen shouldn't be able to do something like this." Though Danzo stopped the lightning flood from hitting him, it still continued spreading in other directions. Within seconds, 3 underground floors were completely in shambles. Thankfully, while the seals weren't strong enough to stop the lightning flood, it slowly whittled down the power of the lightning flood, putting an end to the destruction. Unfortunately, the destruction caused by the lightning until that moment was too high. The top 3 floors collapsed entirely, forcing Danzo and the 2 root ninjas to evacuate in a hurry. If it wasn't for the fact that Fujin's clone didn't target the pillars, the entire base might have collapsed. Thankfully for Danzo, the laboratories on the bottom 2 floors weren't damaged. However, the loss was still extremely high. Danzo was extremely angry. Unfortunately, he was unaware that this was just the first step of Fujin's plan. Not a single person in Konoha would even consider the possibility of such a massive attack being merely a distraction. Fujin's next steps would threaten Root's existence in a way Danzo would never have imagined. The only question was whether Fujin would succeed in his goal, or whether Danzo would succeed in defending his Root. Chapter 507. Apprehending the Spies. While the village was tense, not many people in Konoha were actually aware of what was happening. Only the ninjas having authority were aware of the death of Root ninjas. The others were only following orders and weren't provided any information. Even someone like Guy had no clue of what was actually happening in the village. After all, the route was supposed to be disbanded. Besides, releasing such news could cause panic to spread in the village. Of course, not being aware made everyone tense as well. However, since they hadn't found anyone in the long search, the village had relaxed slightly. Most ninjas felt that it was just an exercise in case anything happened. The village was sleeping peacefully. Suddenly, several ninjas sensed a massive chakra spike despite not having any chakra fields activated. At the same time, a tremor was felt in a part of the village. After all, Root headquarters was created underground. When Fujin's clone destroyed 3 underground floors in a single attack, it caused a mini earthquake in the nearby area. Sleeping in his room, Hiruzen's eyes snapped open. He immediately flickered and appeared on top of his roof. Moments later, Umbu guards appeared behind him. He looked towards Root headquarters in confusion and wondered, what the hell is happening there? Such a massive chakra signature. For a moment I thought that the 9 tails had broken loose again. Fortunately, the chakra is much smaller. Still, what is happening? He immediately began moving towards the Root headquarters. Similar scenes happened all around the village. Every clan leader woke up. Unlike Hiruzen, they didn't move themselves and instead sent a couple of Jounin squads to check out what was happening and reinforce Hiruzen. Several civilian ninjas, including Guy, were making their way towards the source of the explosion. Memories of the 9 tails assault resurfaced in the minds of several people. And just like everyone, Fujin's eyes snapped open in his bedroom as well. In moments, he was on top of his house. In fact, he was even faster than Hiruzen. But unlike Hiruzen, he merely watched towards the Root headquarters. He looked in that direction with an expression that said he was wondering what was happening while spreading his chakra field towards the location. Needless to say, Fujin wasn't the only one looking towards the Root headquarters. The 5 Root ninjas looked towards the source of the explosion as well. Their eyes widened as they realized that the Root headquarters had been hit, and sensing how strong the explosion was, they couldn't help being worried. All 5 decided that the mission to watch over Fujin could be postponed. In a moment, all 5 began moving towards the Root headquarters. However, the moment they decided to do so, Fujin could sense their chakra. A frown appeared on his face as 5 shadow clones appeared next to him. All 5 flickered and threw a kunai each, blocking the paths of the 5 Root ninjas. They stopped as Fujin's clones stood in their paths. Aburame Torian shouted angrily, "Suzuki Fujin, why are you attacking us and blocking our path? The village is under attack." Fujin flickered a few meters behind Torian and said, "That's what I want to ask. The village is under threat, and the 5 of you are surrounding my house instead of looking for the culprit? What is the meaning of this?" Torian and the Root ninjas immediately understood why Fujin had blocked them. Torian immediately turned around and said, "It was just a coincidence. This isn't the time to argue about this. We need to reinforce Lord Danzo." Fujin snorted and asked with a hint of anger, "So it was a coincidence that 5 of you were strategically surrounding my house during the night right when the attack happened? I wonder what your intentions are." Lord Hokage and Elder Danzo speculated that this incident was caused by someone inside the village. "Seeing how suspicious you 5 are, I can only assume that you are working with the culprit." Fujin's accusation stunned them. They couldn't even imagine how Fujin reached that conclusion. One of the Root ninjas cursed, "Bastard, stop your meaningless accusation. Get out of the way. Otherwise, we will assume that you are the one working with the culprit." Fujin replied, "Oh, you are accusing a council member of working with an enemy? Good. Very good. I hope you have proof to back your claim up. Seeing how you were spying on a council member, I have no choice but to arrest you 5 right now. Don't resist, or I won't hold back." Immediately, all 5 shadow clones prepared for a battle. A sword appeared in their right hand. The 5 Root ninjas immediately became tense. They had heard about how strong Fujin was. Torian said, "Don't do anything crazy, Fujin. We were just on a mission." Fujin chuckled and said, "A mission to spy on a council member? Good luck explaining that to Lord Hokage and the council. As for doing anything crazy, it depends on whether you'll be obedient or resist. Fujin's words left little room for discussion. He had been overbearing from the start. It was as if he was looking for trouble. However, considering the situation, the root ninjas didn't find it odd. Anyone else in power would react the same way if they were being spied on. Not too long ago, an entire clan was about to revolt due to this factor. The root ninjas exchanged eye glances. Without any command, all 5 attacked at the same time. For moved to attack the clones, while Torian moved backwards to attack Fujin. His hands turned purple as he extended his arm towards Fujin, aiming to touch him. In response, Fujin raised his right arm and extended 2 fingers. Wind began flowing around the fingers. Wind release. Blades of wind jutsu immediately. A few wind blades formed and moved towards Torian, whose eyes widened. He gritted his teeth and moved to dodge the wind blades. Unfortunately, the distance was too small to dodge all of them. However, he still weaved through the wind blades, dodging most of them and only getting hit by the blades that wouldn't critically injure him, so that he could continue moving forward. Several deep cuts opened up on his body. However, he gritted his teeth and continued moving forward while thinking, from what Lord Danzo said, I won't be able to defeat him from a distance. His wind jutsus will have too much of an advantage. The only way to defeat him is by touching him. Through great determination, he reached just 1 meter from Fujin and punched him. Fujin casually raised his arm and caught his punch. At the same time, Fujin's left palm slammed into Torian's stomach, causing him to vomit blood. However, Torian was extremely pleased. Fujin could feel that he was smiling even though Torian was wearing a mask. Fujin's arm began turning purple as Torian said, "This is my speciality. Since you touched me, you will be poisoned. Let us go, otherwise, you'll meet your end here, Suzuki Fujin." He thought, though he is strong, he is still too green. In a battle, it doesn't matter who is stronger. All that matters is who wins. If he had stuck to his strengths and stayed at a distance, I wouldn't have had an easy time against him. Now, he'll lose due to his arrogance. Suddenly, Torian realized something. He couldn't use his chakra. Fujin's left hand had applied the self-cursing seal on him, and, despite being poisoned, there was no fear on Fujin's face. He heard a voice from behind him say, "The Aburame clan? Huh? What a unique method of using bugs. This is the first time I've seen something like this. Unfortunately for you, it is useless against a shadow clone." Torian immediately turned his head and saw Fujin standing a safe distance away. Slightly behind him, the remaining 4 root ninjas were already dealt with. All had the self-cursing seal and were knocked out cold. He thought, I attacked a shadow clone? He sent a shadow clone to sneak up on me? No wonder he was this fearless. I thought he was just arrogant. That said, is this one a clone or the real body? Torian wasn't sure. Fujin said, "Stop resisting. If your bugs attack after you are unconscious, then I'll have no choice but to kill all of them." Torian said, "I hope you know what you are doing, Suzuki Fujin." A large number of minute-sized bugs began exiting his body. However, Torian received no response, other than a punch in his gut from the clone he had poisoned. The punch was enhanced with chakra and strong enough to immediately knock him out. At the same time, a couple of clones flickered next to Torian and activated a barrier, sealing Torian, his bugs, and Fujin's clone inside. The clone sealed inside immediately applied a few more seals on Torian before being dispelled due to being attacked by the bugs. Fujin left his 5 shadow clones there to keep an eye on the root ninjas and flickered towards the root headquarters. He thought, Step 2 completed. Now, time for Step 3. Unfortunately, unlike the first 2 steps, I will have very little control over the outcome. If things go perfectly, then root will no longer exist. If they don't, then the status quo will be maintained. Regardless, it will heavily restrict Danzo while I won't have any loss. Though the expression on his face still showed that he was annoyed and angry, internally, he was very indifferent the whole time. Even the emotions he displayed while arguing against Torian were fake. He only had them to make his actions look more convincing. The root headquarters were currently in chaos as no one knew who the attacker was and why the root was attacked. If Danzo knew that the only reason his headquarters was targeted was so that his subordinates spying on Fujin would expose themselves, who knows how he would have reacted. Chapter 508, Aftermath. Before Fujin and the Root ninjas entered into a fight, Hiruzen along with his Umbu guards reached the Root headquarters. Their eyes widened as they noticed the state of the top 3 underground floors of the base. The walls and floors of the base had almost entirely collapsed. Hiruzen quickly sensed Danzo and flickered towards him. He appeared behind him and asked, "Danzo, what happened here?" Danzo was already annoyed. As soon as he left the base, he had Fu sense the attacker. Unfortunately, Fu couldn't sense anyone anymore. It was as if the attacker had disappeared in thin air. Of course, seeing the level of attack, Danzo speculated that the attacker was too good at hiding himself and managed to escape during the destruction. On hearing Hiruzen's question, Danzo answered, "My headquarters was attacked." Hiruzen asked, "By whom? Did you already kill the attacker?" Danzo said, "No. He disappeared. I can't sense his chakra signature." Surprise appeared on Hiruzen's face. He couldn't help but say, "You mean someone attacked the Root headquarters while you were inside it, and left before you could even see what he looked like?" To say Hiruzen was surprised was an understatement. While some thought of Danzo as weak and a relic of the past, he knew very well how strong Danzo still was. He couldn't help but wonder if Danzo was sleeping when the attack happened. He said, "Tell me everything as it happened." Danzo informed him about suddenly detecting the chakra signature and the massive lightning flood that followed seconds later. Hiruzen fell silent. His expression became serious as he learned how strong the attack was. He didn't suspect Danzo, as he had felt the chakra spike as well. He said, "This level of attack, it can only be done by a Jinchuriki. No other ninja has enough chakra to do something like this and still get away. Unless..." Danzo completed Hiruzen's words, "unless they have Sensei's sword." A frown appeared on his face as he said, "But Sensei's sword is an aim. Why would Hanzo do something like this? It makes no sense for him to provoke Konoha like this." Hiruzen added, "Unless he is allied with some other major village to create trouble for us. Or if an incredible talent has appeared in AIM, and Hanzo has become ambitious once again." A frown appeared on Danzo's face as he thought of that possibility. Just Hanzo alone is a lot of trouble. If he gets a rank S under him, then he'll become even more troublesome to deal with. However, why is he trying to pick on me? Couldn't he just have attacked anyone else to establish prestige? Some things still don't add up. Or could it be that Kumo sent one of their Jinchurikis and is trying to set us up against Hanzo? However, how can a Jinchuriki infiltrate Konoha completely undetected? That should be impossible. Slowly, more ninjas began arriving. Hiruzen passed commands to clear up the debris in the destroyed base. Danzo had already sent one of his subordinates to inform the ninjas in the labs to seal the place and keep other ninjas away from it. In fact, Danzo was hoping that the attacker would target his subordinate who was moving alone so that he could see who it was. Unfortunately, no one attacked. After a few squads had appeared, Fujin appeared as well. He directly met up with Hiruzen and asked with a frown, "Someone attacked the Root headquarters?" Hiruzen nodded. He noticed the annoyance on Fujin's face and wondered, why does he look so annoyed? Is it related to this attack or something else? As for Danzo, he looked at Fujin once and then didn't pay any attention. He thought, "I already have Torian keeping an eye on him. I guess my speculations were baseless. Of course, it doesn't mean that there isn't anything wrong with him. I need to keep an eye on him while pressuring his seat to see how he reacts." Fujin asked, "Are the attackers dead?" Hiruzen shook his head and said no. There was just one, and he got away. Fujin's frown deepened as he asked, "I can understand someone attacking the auxiliary bases, but how could any random ninja attack Root headquarters and get away without any repercussions? Is the Root so ill-protected?" Danzo was offended by that question. He said, "Control your tongue, Fujin. It wasn't a random ninja." Fujin asked, "So you know who the attacker was?" Danzo replied, "No, but we have our speculations." Fujin replied, "That's as good as not knowing anything. Grandpa, I have something to discuss with you, but I guess it can wait until we return to your office." There weren't any clan leaders nearby. Even the ninjas were dispatched to do the work, and wouldn't hear their conversation unless Fujin deliberately made a scene. However, that would go against the personality he had created. What Fujin planned needed clan leaders around. Otherwise, destroying a good portion of the root headquarters and subduing 5 root ninjas wouldn't have the same effect that he wanted. Danzo frowned on hearing Fujin's tone, but he didn't say anything as Fujin was right, and there was no point in arguing. However, his eyes widened as Fujin began walking towards the debris. As he walked, Fujin said, "I'll check if anyone's hiding." Danzo immediately said, "There is no need. We have already checked. The attacker has long fled." Fujin turned around. He was about to say something when Hiruzen said, "He's right. I have inspected it as well. There is no need to check the base. Just keep an eye in case you notice someone acting weird." Fujin frowned, but didn't argue against Hiruzen. Hiruzen sighed in relief. Danzo was slightly relieved as well. The seals could hide the labs from normal ninjas. Against Fujin, they won't have much of a chance. And, unlike the other grandmasters in Konoha, Fujin might not back down if a root ninja tried to stop him from entering the labs. If Fujin entered the labs, then he would see the most messed up things inside Konoha. Hiruzen didn't know how Fujin would react. If he blew up the matter, every ninja clearing the debris would also come to know of it. It would completely ruin Danzo's public image and raise questions about Hiruzen as well. Neither Hiruzen nor Danzo wanted to see that happen. The clearing continued. More ninjas kept appearing, but Hiruzen just assigned them other tasks, such as scouting the area around the base to check if anyone was hiding. Around half an hour later, the debris was all cleared, but nothing was found apart from the dead bodies of the 5 root ninjas. They were in a terrible state due to having faced nearly the full force of the terrifying attack. Guy, who had just cleared the debris in the area he was assigned, noticed Fujin standing alone while casually watching everyone. He immediately appeared next to him and said, "Fujin, you have arrived as well?" Fujin nodded and said, "Yeah, the attack is just too big to be ignored." Guy agreed and said, "Yeah, and to think they could target the root headquarters. Do you have any idea about what is happening in the village?" There were too many searches happening throughout the village for a couple of days as well. Since there was no one else near them, Fujin said, "Yeah. 2 nights ago, 15 root ninjas were killed. We couldn't find the killers. I had thought that they escaped the village. I guess I was wrong. Don't tell it to others." Guy's eyes widened momentarily. He said softly, "It looks like someone is targeting the root. To think that the culprits couldn't be caught." He looked at Fujin and said, "Thank you for letting me know. Usually, Kakashi fills me in on these things, but he has been away on a mission." Fujin nodded and said, "No worries. Just be careful. I wasn't too concerned about the situation earlier, but the destruction here is insane. If the culprits are trying to eliminate high-level ninjas in the village, then we could be targeted as well. I doubt it would be an easy fight. Even more so if he attacks us when we have to protect others." Guy could feel the seriousness in Fujin's voice. He said, "I'll be careful. I guess I'll need to ease up on the training for a bit. You be careful too." Fujin nodded. While Guy and Fujin were chatting, Danzo and Hiruzen were monitoring the search. Both were concerned as nothing was found. Needless to say, Danzo's mood was beyond terrible. Unfortunately, there wasn't anything he could do to find the attacker, nor could he take his anger out on someone else. This was a grave threat his root was facing, and yet he was helpless and without any lead that he could pursue immediately. Since nothing was found, Hiruzen deployed some Umbu ninjas and sent the remaining ninjas back. Fujin, the clan leaders, and the elders were called to Hiruzen's office for a quick meeting. Fujin said farewell to Guy and flickered to Hiruzen's office. Once everyone arrived, Hiruzen informed everyone about the events of that night. Hiruzen's office became silent. Everyone except Fujin, Hiruzen, and Danzo had complicated expressions. The clan leaders thought about what would have happened if such an attack had been aimed at their clan compounds. They realized that their clans would have unimaginable losses. After all, even someone like Danzo wasn't able to do much other than protect himself. Hiruzen noticed Fujin's expression, but didn't find anything odd. With Fujin's strength and abilities, dodging such an attack wouldn't be a difficult task. Even if his house was sneak attacked the same way, there was a good chance that his house would actually survive the hit. While there were places in Konoha with more seals than in Fujin's house, nothing came close in terms of the density of the seals. Seeing that no one was saying anything, Hiruzen asked, "Does anyone have any ideas on what we should do further?" Hiruzen was hoping for Shikaku to figure something out. Unfortunately, the situation didn't make any sense to him either. It was just too peculiar. Two big attacks had happened, and they didn't even know who was behind it apart from some speculations. And even the speculations were such that Konoha couldn't take action easily. He didn't say anything. Seeing that no one was saying anything, Fujin said, "I have something that I was wondering about." Chapter 509. Confronting Danzo. Everyone immediately looked at Fujin. Fujin looked at Danzo and said, "For root bases were attacked 2 days ago. Seeing that nothing else happened, there is little doubt that the culprit is targeting the root. At such a time, why weren't your root ninjas keeping an eye on the root headquarters and were instead spying on me?" Everyone's eyes widened as they heard Fujin's words. They all immediately looked at Danzo. Danzo was stunned as well. He never imagined that the elite ninjas he sent to spy on Fujin would be discovered within hours. Nor did he think that Fujin would confront him in front of everyone during a time when the village was facing a grave threat. Before Danzo could reply, Fujin added, "Your actions are too peculiar, Elder Danzo. Instead of protecting the root ninjas, you spread them even thinner. Perhaps if they were in the root headquarters, then the attacker might have been spotted before it was too late. You could have kept the root headquarters safe. You could even have had a chance to fight and capture him. However, you decided to send them to spy on me." Everyone was staring at Danzo. Deploying root ninjas at such a time made little to no sense. Not to mention, Fujin was a council member as well. Spying on him meant that others could be spied upon as well. Though Fujin had provided no proof, knowing Danzo, everyone in the room believed that Danzo had indeed done something like that. Of course, that was no reason for Danzo to accept it. He said, "I didn't send anyone to spy on you. I don't know what you were talking about." Fujin asked, "Is that so? Could you tell me why 5 of your root ninjas were hiding their chakra signature and surrounding my house instead of staying in the root headquarters?" Danzo frowned. He said, "Don't accuse me without any proof, Suzuki Fujin. I had dispatched a squad for an important secret mission. It had nothing to do with you." Fujin continued asking in a neutral tone without a hint of expression on his face. "Oh, I wonder what secret mission you had to do at such a point." Danzo displayed slight anger and asked, "Do I have to explain myself to you? Besides, my ninjas should have returned by now. Did you do anything to them?" Seeing that Fujin had discovered them, Danzo wondered why they hadn't returned yet. Not to mention, they should have returned after the explosion. But there was no sign of them. Chapter 510. Ganging up on Danzo. Without missing a beat or even looking at Hamura, Fujin replied, "Just because you have contributed in the past doesn't give you a right to behave like a rogue ninja inside the village. If every ninja who contributed to previous wars acted this way, Konoha would collapse within a few hours. Regardless of how much a ninja has contributed, if he begins targeting the Konoha ninjas for any reason, he should be eliminated or at least imprisoned. Don't forget that not too long ago, one of the 3 legendary Sanins did something similar and went rogue. Today, he is one of the main suspects behind the deaths of 20 root ninjas and the destruction of root headquarters. Even if Elder Danzo wasn't the one who gave those instructions, this event shows that he is incapable of leading the root. His subordinates are willfully ignoring his commands and attacking a council member. Not to mention, he has shown that he doesn't care much about the lives of root ninjas. Instead of protecting the headquarters in time of crisis, he dispatched them away not caring that they might be targeted and leaving the root headquarters with very low manpower. We cannot afford to keep losing excellent ninjas just because he is no longer capable of leading them properly. Silence spread in the room once again. Rage was once again visible on Danzo's face. However, this time it wasn't an act. Fujin had openly called him incompetent in front of everyone. Danzo was extremely tempted to use the eye, but controlled himself as Hiruzen was in the room as well and staring at him. Before he could explode in rage, Shikaku said, "He isn't wrong." Danzo immediately looked toward Shikaku and said, "Instead of searching for the culprit, you want to blame me?" This time Root was target. Who would you blame if he targets the Nara clan? Shikaku explained. Dealing with the culprit would have been the best way. Unfortunately, we don't even know who the culprits are or what their motivation is. The only thing we know is that they are targeting the Root for some reason. If their goal is just to seek revenge on something you or the Root have done, then the attacks should stop once Root ninjas are mixed in with the Umbu. If their enmity is too high and they still try to target Root ninjas, then they won't be able to cover up their traces as well as they have been. So, it'll be best for the Root to disband entirely. It might be our only method of dealing with the culprit. Not to mention, the incident of spying on and attacking Fujin needs to be investigated properly as well. If even council members get attacked within the village, then no one will feel safe inside the village. I suggest that we disband the Root entirely for the time being. We will continue looking for the culprit and investigate the attack on Fujin. Depending on our results on those two findings, we can decide whether Root should continue existing secretly or leave it in the past and move forward. As the Jounin commander and publicly accepted as the smartest ninja in Konoha, if not the world, Shikaku's words held a lot more sway than Fujin's. Danzo understood that. He immediately replied, whether Root continues to exist or not is not up to the council. Not too long ago, Danzo was hoping to use the council to revive his Root. And now, the circumstances had forced him to do the complete opposite. He understood that saying it meant that he could never use the council to force Hiruzen to revive the Root. However, he could only handle one situation at a time. As long as the Root continued existing, he could always come up with more schemes to increase its strength. Shibi suddenly said, I agree with Shikaku's analysis. While the council can't interfere with Root normally, it's a different case if Root ninjas are targeting a council member. Not to mention, we have already lost 20 capable ninjas during peacetime in the last 3 days. It's better to disband the Root than see every Root ninja die, because someone is too stubborn to see the situation. Inoichi added, I agree as well. Immediately, every other clan leader agreed with Shikaku. After all, other than the Hyuga clan, all of them had several of their geniuses forcefully taken in by the Root. With Fujin taking the lead in targeting Danzo, they decided to add to the pressure on Danzo. Several of them voiced their own thoughts about the situation. A few brought out their grievances against the Root, mentioning how so many of their clan members had died during the training in the Root, and how the families of the Root ninjas never saw them again, among other things. The room became more tense, especially Danzo and the elders. The elders might not treat Fujin or one clan leader that seriously. However, it was a different matter altogether if every single clan leader was on the same page. Even Hiruzen won't be able to dismiss them lightly. If he did, then the coup that the Uchihas were planning could look like a child's play. Though Fujin didn't show any change in his expression and seemed like he was hiding his anger, in truth, he was extremely pleased. He thought, good, this is what I wanted. With all the clan leaders and I, who represent the civilian ninjas even if only in name, opposing Root, these four can't act willfully. Now, the rest depends on what Hiruzen wants. If he has been looking to deal Root a blow, then Root will be finished for good. Otherwise, it'll only be restricted. When Fujin realized that Danzo might still not leave him alone and continue pressuring him, he came up with a 3-step plan against Danzo after thinking for nearly a couple of days. As soon as he detected the 5 Root ninjas spying on his house, the conditions for setting the plan in motion were fulfilled. The first step of the plan was doing something so big that it would attract the entire village's attention, forcing everyone to take the situation with utmost seriousness. Fujin decided to directly target the Root headquarters for this step. It served several additional purposes. For one, it allowed Fujin to directly inflict more damage on the Root. The Root headquarters was underground and some distance away from where people lived. Fujin didn't need to be concerned about hitting an innocent here. As a bonus, it also showed that Danzo wasn't capable enough of even protecting his own base. And lastly, it would force the Root ninjas that were spying on him to show themselves. The second step of the plan was arresting the Root ninjas spying on him. In terms of difficulty, it was the easiest to achieve. However, in terms of importance, this step was the most important as it gave Fujin a chance to accuse Danzo. Unlike the clan leaders who had gotten used to occasionally suffering at Danzo's hands and hence couldn't escalate small offenses, Fujin had never suffered a loss in Konoha. So Fujin escalating the situation wouldn't feel odd. Fujin knew that it wasn't a huge offense. At the very least, it wasn't something that could make Hiruzen take root away from Danzo. After all, they were only spying on Fujin as Danzo had some suspicions. Hiruzen himself always spied on the entire village with his crystal ball. Hiruzen would just give Danzo a slap on his wrist and let him off. However, the third step of Fujin's plan came into action here. That was to let the clan leaders sense an opportunity to take out all their grievances against Danzo and Root while using Fujin as a front. Under normal circumstances, they might still be reluctant, but the attack 2 nights ago, and Danzo and Root being weak and vulnerable due to Fujin's first step gave them an opportunity that they just couldn't miss. The fact that Torian decided to attack Fujin instead of surrendering helped him even more. The case had changed from just spying to spying in an attempt to assassinate. As Fujin had expected, every clan leader decided to take advantage of the chance he had provided. It was a strange plan, as every successive step was less intense and destructive than the previous step. The first step was total annihilation, the second step was just retraining a few ninjas, and the third step was diplomacy without any fighting involved. It went against the traditional way of slowly escalating the situation. However, it fitted perfectly in this scenario. Seeing every clan leader speaking against Danzo, Koharu and Hamura decided to go silent. Danzo, of course, wouldn't take everything lying down. He argued against everyone, but Fujin didn't even need to open his mouth. In terms of politics, the clan leaders were far better than him. Even in terms of intelligence, no one was a slouch. If they were, then they wouldn't have been clan leaders. They couldn't do anything earlier, as Danzo never gave them an opening. Now that they had it, they immediately ganged up on Danzo and countered every single point he made while leveling more accusations against the Root. The situation became intense in no time. With neither side backing off, it immediately became very ugly. Understanding the situation, Hiruzen sighed. He flared his chakra, silencing the room once again and gaining everyone's attention. He looked at everyone and said, "Don't forget that we are the leaders of Konoha. Please maintain decorum." I had called everyone here to keep everyone informed about the attack on Root headquarters. I didn't think that the meeting would take such a turn. I'll think about what to do, and we will have an official council meeting soon. For now, everyone except Danzo is dismissed. Chapter 511. Hiruzen's Decision. Seeing how serious Hiruzen was, no one spoke a word. Everyone except Danzo and the Umbu guards began leaving the office. Hiruzen suddenly realized something and said, "Fujin, take the Umbu guards with you. Hand over the Root ninjas you captured to them." Fujin nodded and said, "All right." The Umbu guards followed him out. As the group began walking out of the building, Hamura said, "Fujin, I can understand that you were angry due to the situation, but refrain from threatening other council members in the future. It won't do you or the council any good." Hamura still remembered how brazenly Fujin had threatened Koharu. While he spoke, his tone wasn't overbearing. He spoke as if he was an elder trying to pass wisdom to the young. Hence, no one tried refuting him on the spot. Fujin nodded and said, "Sorry about that. I was just making a point. Besides, if I really intended to do something like that, I would have just done it. Why would I speak about it and draw suspicions?" Once again, Fujin's words caught everyone's attention. The two elders and the clan leaders all stared at Fujin. They were forced to re-evaluate him once again. Sweat appeared on Hamura and Koharu's faces. Fujin's words implied that they need to be more worried about him when he doesn't speak instead of otherwise. In a way, that was a far greater threat than what he had said in Hiruzen's office. Another way of looking at his words was that if something actually happened to Koharu, he shouldn't be considered a suspect because he wouldn't do something so stupid. It removed all responsibility from him while increasing the threat to Koharu several times. Before anyone could say anything, Fujin said, "Anyway, it's been a long day and a bloody night. I'll take my leave for now. Stay safe. If the attacker is still in the village, then he might target others as well." Without waiting for anyone's reply, he flickered out of the building. The Umbu guards followed him to his house. Koharu cursed under her breath. This brat. Senju Hiromasa chuckled and said, the boy is still too young. Don't take his words to heart. Shikaku agreed and said, I haven't seen him act like this before. I guess Danzo's actions truly infuriated him this time. Not only did he leave Root unguarded, but he also sent someone with such a dangerous ability to spy on him. Inoichi added, still, his ability to control his emotions is truly unbelievable. At 15, I would have exploded in rage if someone had done that against me in the village. Shikaka nodded and said, yeah, no doubts there. He handled the situation very maturely. Anyway, we can't rest easy in this situation. What Fujin and Danzo said is true. If someone could destroy the Root headquarters in one attack, then our clans aren't safe. The attack was truly fierce. Thankfully, there were several protocols in place in Konoha to deal with such situations. While Fujin handed over the unconscious Root ninjas to the Umbu guards, the clan leaders and the elders immediately got into action and began increasing the defense of the village. None of them wanted for such an attack to fall on their families. Meanwhile, Hiruzen and Danzo stared at each other in Hiruzen's office. The situation was as tense as before, even though no words were exchanged. Seeing that Danzo wasn't explaining himself, Hiruzen sighed and asked in a tired voice, why did you do that? Danzo said, Hiruzen, I haven't done anything. Hiruzen sighed again and said, what's the point in lying to me? Just tell me the truth and your reason. Otherwise, I'm afraid that the Root will be finished for good today. Hiruzen could sense the intentions of every clan leader. Now that they had received an opportunity, he knew that none of them intended to let go. In truth, he knew that they were looking for such an opportunity for a long time. But with Hiruzen and Danzo at the helm, they never received such an opportunity. Now that Fujin had provided them with one, they wouldn't rest until Root no longer existed or was heavily restricted. Danzo could see that as well. He said, the boy is very suspicious. I only sent them to keep an eye on him. I'm not sure why they attacked him, or even if they attacked him. Hiruzen raised an eyebrow. He asked, what do you mean by suspicious? Danzo said, I don't have anything concrete about him, but my instincts say that something about him is horribly wrong. He was missing from the village for quite some time, and from the day he returned, the attack on Root ninjas began. Even earlier, the two Root ninjas who left the village around the same time as him disappeared as well. Leaving these two incidents, there is a lot about him that is suspicious. Why has he inscribed so many seals on his house? It's almost as if he doesn't want anyone entering his house. When you proposed including him in the council, I had a couple of ninjas check on him. However, he shares the same carefulness even while he is training, not allowing anyone to look at him. It shows that he is extremely careful for some reason, even when he is inside the village. It is not something that an innocent person would do. Besides, his power has increased too suddenly. A 15-year-old boy being this strong is suspicious in itself. Not to mention, Fujin becoming a grandmaster in Fuinjutsu out of nowhere is even more suspicious. His rapid improvement raises a lot of questions about him. Hiruzen heard Danzo. Unknowingly, a look of disappointment appeared on Hiruzen's face. He couldn't even hide it. He couldn't help but think, have you fallen this low, old friend? Sure, Sui was innocent, but his power was indeed a threat to the village if his nature changed in the future. But Fujin doesn't have any such power. Will you suspect every talented ninja that appears in the village, no matter how loyal they are? The things that Danzo mentioned to be suspicious weren't suspicious at all for Hiruzen. Fujin didn't stop Hiruzen from spying on him when he trained. Though the seals on Fujin's house could be seen with suspicion, Hiruzen knew that it was just Fujin's nature. If he truly intended to do something, he wouldn't have put so many seals in an obvious manner. As for Fuinjutsu, Hiruzen knew that Fujin had spammed shadow clones to be able to learn it quickly. He hadn't become a grandmaster out of nowhere. Similarly, his strength had also increased step by step. Thanks to Renjiro's reports, Hiruzen's crystal ball, and the fact that Fujin regularly asked Hiruzen's help, Hiruzen could see how natural his progress was. The only differentiating factor was how much Fujin trained without taking a break. If Hiruzen began suspecting someone just for training hard, then every capable ninja in the village, including Hiruzen and Danzo themselves, should be suspected as well. As such, all Hiruzen saw was that Danzo was being delusional. Danzo didn't miss the look of disappointment on Hiruzen's face. He asked, "Why are you looking at me like that, Hiruzen?" Hiruzen said, "I am disappointed in you, Danzo." Danzo displayed some anger and asked, "Do you want to say that my instincts are wrong?" Hiruzen replied, "It doesn't matter what your instincts say. You are way out of line with your behavior. There is nothing suspicious about Fujin. You only showed interest in him once he became very strong." Hiruzen's expression hardened as he said, "Fujin's and Shikaku's words are true. From today onwards, I can't allow Root to operate inside the village." Danzo's eye widened on hearing that. He never expected Hiruzen to say something like that. His expression became grim. He was angry for real. He asked in a grim tone, "What are you implying?" Hiruzen said, "If I let you continue doing what you are right now, it is inevitable that you'll try to eliminate him the same way you tried killing Shursui. If you hadn't meddled back then perhaps the Uchiha clan would still be in the village, and things might have taken a turn for the better. I can't change what has already happened. However, if you display even a bit of intention of harming Fujin or any other ninja in the village." Hiruzen's expression became extremely serious as he stared into Danzo's eye. He said, "Then I won't show you the same mercy that I showed Orochimaru." Chapter 512, Root's Fate. Danzo's expression became even more grim on hearing Hiruzen's words. He had known Hiruzen for too long and knew that he wasn't bluffing. While Danzo wasn't a weakling and wouldn't be afraid if Fujin or even some other Kage said it, it was different with Hiruzen. He knew that even with Shursui's eye, Hashirama's cells, and Izanagi, he wouldn't stand much chance against Hiruzen. He asked, "You will kill someone who has worked with you for over 6 decades, given everything to the village, including my limbs, just because that boy accused me of something that I didn't do." Danzo knew Hiruzen had a soft spot for him and the other 2 elders. The 4 of them truly had been through thick and thin together. Even though Danzo did many things that opposed Hiruzen directly or indirectly, this was the first time Hiruzen had threatened him in this manner. Hiruzen didn't back off and replied, "I wouldn't have a choice. Fujin isn't Shursui or Itachi. Both of them matured too quickly because of the Uchiha coup. When you attacked Shursui, both he and Itachi thought about the village and didn't retaliate, as the Uchiha clan will get a reason for officially launching a coup. Shursui chose to take his life, while Itachi kept his mouth shut. As a result, you didn't face any consequences for your actions. Even though Fujin is mature for his age as well, he hasn't gone through something similar. If you attack, he won't see any reason to not retaliate and start a huge fight. A fight that will alert everyone. Once it is out in the open, I won't have a choice but to kill you. Even if you kill Fujin without giving him a chance to retaliate, your actions would show that you'll target every new rank S ninja that appears in Konoha, irrespective of how loyal he or she is to the village. As Fujin said, your past contributions mean nothing if your current actions actively harm the village. Konoha will be better off without you if you fall that low." He took a pause before continuing. "I forgave your previous actions because I hoped that you did what you did believing that it was for the good of the village. However, your actions have long stopped being for the good of the village, Danzo. If you were to continue down this path, then I would forget our friendship and camaraderie and kill you with my own hands." Hiruzen's tone was extremely serious. It was the same when he disbanded Root after the Uchiha massacre. Danzo understood that he wouldn't be able to change Hiruzen's mind. Fortunately, he had a few more cards. He asked, "What about the Root laboratory? Will you be bringing it to the open? You know very well what consequences it will have if what happens inside gets leaked to the public." Hiruzen thought for a few seconds and asked, "Do you still want to continue experimenting?" As he said, Hiruzen's eyes lingered on Danzo's bandaged arm. Danzo replied, "There is no one else in the village who could handle that." Hiruzen replied, "All right, you can keep control over the laboratories. The Root headquarters won't be rebuilt, as the laboratories weren't harmed. The top 3 floors will be just cleared out. You only need 5 Root ninjas to work in the labs. I'll let you choose 5 more Root ninjas to act as your guards. These 10 ninjas are all you would have under your control. Your remaining root ninjas, including the ones teaching the rescued kids and the ones undercover in Fire Capital, will be inducted into the Umbu. The rescued kids will be taken away from Root as well. I'll make arrangements for them and integrate them into the village. From now onwards, you don't have the authority to spy on or take action against anyone inside Konoha. Nor do you have any authority to order anyone around. Your subordinates won't keep an eye on Naruto either. In addition, I'll be taking away your vote in the council. Your only authority will be within the Root laboratories where others won't be allowed to disturb you. If you were to break any of these rules, then I'll take away the laboratory as well as the remaining 10 Root ninjas. Danzo's eyes widened at how thorough Hiruzen was this time. With so few subordinates, he truly didn't have any room to maneuver. He had added plenty of restrictions on Danzo on top of it. And by taking away the kids, Hiruzen had cut off Root's future. However, the biggest blow was taking away his vote in the council. Without having an influence in the council, reviving Root would be a Herculean task. He immediately said, "I am an elder in the village. Do you want to throw me out of the council after all I have done?" Hiruzen replied, "It's the cost you have to pay for keeping the laboratories and 10 Root ninjas. If you want, you can keep your vote on the council, but you won't have any more rights than what Hamura and Kohara have. Choose what you want." Danzo immediately said, "I am not looking over the labs for myself. It's for the benefit of the village. Hiruzen, if the experiments in the labs get leaked out, then it won't just be my reputation that will be ruined. You won't be able to keep your seat as the Hokage either." Hiruzen nodded and said, "That's true. Go ahead and leak the information if you want. I'll just give up on the Hokage seat and appoint the 5th Hokage." Danzo was surprised by how calmly Hiruzen had responded. He understood that while Hiruzen would lose the Hokage seat, he would also lose everything he had. In the future, it would be impossible for him to have any influence whatsoever in Konoha. While Hiruzen might be alright with not being the Hokage, he wasn't fine with losing what little influence he still had. Danzo didn't say anything. It went without saying that he didn't want mutual destruction and that he valued the labs and 10 subordinates far more than a mere vote. Seeing him silent, Hiruzen said, "I thought as much. Considering your contributions, you will be invited to important council meetings. However, you will no longer have a vote in any matter." Seeing that he had no way of negotiating further, Danzo said, "The village will always require the Root. There will come a day when you regret this decision, Hiruzen." He turned around and began walking out. Before he could open the door, Hiruzen said, "Danzo, the culprit has still not been found. They might still try to attack the Root. Stay on guard. If a Jinchuriki is involved, then the attack might not be restricted to just lightning. They can supercharge any jutsu with their massive chakra. As for the ninjas who spied on Fujin, I'll question them in some time. We will have a council meeting at 9 today. Come see me before then." Danzo turned around and looked at Hiruzen once, before leaving his office without speaking a word. On this day, Danzo had lost a lot, and unlike the Uchiha incident, he didn't think that he had committed any fault. Things just spiral out of control somehow. He was in no mood to discuss anything else with Hiruzen. As he left the office, his expression became very ugly. He thought, such a terrible day. Of course, I'll be prepared for an attack. Those bastards. I hope they attack once again. This time, I'll catch and kill them myself, even if I have to sacrifice a few eyes. I haven't even done anything recently to attract such hatred. Also, I need to find out what happened with Torian. Why did he attack Fujin and expose his skills? As long as he hadn't used his ability, I could have said that Fujin was making things up. But by mentioning that ability, Fujin made his words sound too convincing. As he thought of Fujin, Danzo's mood worsened. He thought, the odd feeling I'm getting about this boy has gotten even worse. I never expected him to do something like this. He gave the clans an opportunity that they had been looking for decades. Unfortunately, Hiruzen completely trusts him. I can't do anything to him in the near future. Otherwise, Hiruzen might truly carry out his threat. With nothing else to do, Danzo left to see what was left of his base. He would be spending a considerable amount of time adding more seals to the Root laboratories to ensure that they could withstand a destructive jutsu if the Root was attacked once again. Back in the Hokage's office, Hiruzen let out a sigh. Unlike all the times he acted, he truly was tired. The route was attacked twice in 2 days inside Konoha, and they still hadn't found any culprit. On the other hand, Danzo was returning back to acting however he wanted. Both incidents gave headaches to Hiruzen. He thought, Danzo, I truly hope you don't do anything outrageous once again. I would hate having to kill you myself. Sigh. Age hasn't been kind to me. I can't continue as a Hokage for long in this way. I can no longer take decisions as ruthlessly as I once did. Chapter 513. Hiruzen's Exhaustion. Hiruzen had carried the responsibilities of the Hokage position right from the end of the First Great Ninja War to the end of the Third Great Ninja War. The era during which he led the village was far more turbulent as compared to the relatively peaceful time Konoha currently enjoyed. Unlike today, when Suna was weak, Kiri was embroiled in a civil war, and Inoki had grown old and wary, Hiruzen had to deal with the never-ending schemes of the powerful Third Raikage. A young and more active Inoki, the cunning Third Mizukage, and a Sunigakure that was much stronger with several rank S ninjas and promising youngsters among their ranks, all of whom eyed the Land of Fire like hungry wolves. In addition, he also had to watch out for the powerful Hanzo, who led the Land of Rain. Though he hadn't been perfect, he had led the village admirably and had ensured that Konoha stayed strong throughout despite being surrounded by enemies on all sides. He had done his duty of passing the will of fire to the next generation by passing the hat to Minato. When he had retired, Konoha had 7 rank S ninjas in Hiruzen, Danzo, Minato, the 3 Sanins, and Uchiha Fugaku, along with a mature Jinchuriki and a powerful group of veteran Jounins who had survived through 2 great ninja wars. Unfortunately, the Nine Tails assault caused the death of Minato and Kushina and eliminated the majority of the veteran Jounins in Konoha, directly pushing Konoha from being the strongest village to a vulnerable one. Hiruzen didn't want to let the 2 people who competed with Minato for the 4th Hokage seat become the Hokage, as Orochimaru grew increasingly dark while Fugaku was suspected to be behind the Nine Tails attack. As a result, Hiruzen had to take the Hokage seat once again. Unfortunately for him, the conditions were far worse than merely the village being vulnerable due to the losses. The powerful Uchiha clan had to be treated with suspicion due to the Nine Tails assault. Danzo's dreams of becoming the Hokage reignited with Minato out of the way and Jiraiya, and Tsunade showing no interest in the position. He created more and more problems for Hiruzen, which he failed to curb in time. And Orochimaru became increasingly dark to a point where he was considered beyond saving, and Hiruzen had to exile him. Hiruzen's second stint as the Hokage was a mere shadow of what he had achieved during his initial reign. Being as smart and experienced as he was, he could see it clearly. Unfortunately, he hadn't been able to handle the matters as efficiently as he could when he was younger. In his old age, he had been reluctant to be as decisive as he once was. Even after Minato's death, Hiruzen had done well in keeping Konoha's enemies at bay. Apart from the Hizashi incident, Konoha didn't suffer any significant loss at the hands of enemy villages. Of course, the weak situations of the other villages were a big help. However, when it came to internal politics, Hiruzen had performed miserably during this time. Every time it felt like the village would stabilize after a lot of effort, the village would be hit by something that would set it back several years. And that something would always be an internal issue in Konoha which he should have handled long before it reached such a level. It was what exhausted Hiruzen to the point that he became tired of the job. And yet, he had no choice but to continue sitting on the post, as no one who was qualified was willing to accept the responsibilities of the Hokage seat. Hiruzen couldn't continue sitting in his office for a long time. After feeling pity for himself for some time, he got up and began dispatching the Umbu ninjas to cooperate with what Shikaku and the other clan leaders were doing. In addition, he left to see Toryun and the other 4 root ninjas who were with his Umbu guards. The Umbu guards had woken the 5 of them up. Fujin's clones had only knocked them unconscious while placing seals on them. It wasn't difficult to heal and wake them up. On seeing Hiruzen, they all became serious. Hiruzen asked some questions which they answered truthfully. On hearing them, a peculiar expression appeared on Hiruzen's face. He thought, "That's it? Are they hiding something, or is this all that happened?" Hiruzen thought for a bit, and concluded, I doubt they will lie to me. Besides, they were indeed spying on Fujin. Considering Fujin's nature, things might have developed in this manner. Regardless, I should call him tomorrow as well in case there are some differences. Leave it, he and Danzo might break into a fight. I'll just confirm during the council meeting. Still, as Hiruzen heard what actually happened, he couldn't help but think how small the incident was. It was merely spying along with a small clash with no casualties, and yet the incident had blown up spectacularly in Danzo's face. Hiruzen couldn't help but think, no wonder Danzo's expression showed that he was facing injustice. He has pulled stunts 100 times worse than this on a regular basis for decades, and didn't even face so much as a complaint. But this minor incident nearly cost him everything. Hiruzen couldn't help but find the situation funny. It was as if a serial killer who had killed his victims for decades and managed to stay safe from police had suddenly been apprehended because of an insignificant petty crime he committed. Hiruzen left the Root ninjas with his guards and began monitoring the efforts to look into the incident and investigate the village. Unfortunately, it became clear very soon that it would be another fruitless search. Hiruzen gave up on it once the sun rose and called Danzo to meet the Root ninjas. After learning what had actually happened, Danzo exploded in rage once again. He looked at Hiruzen and shouted. If he hadn't insisted on stopping them, Torian wouldn't even have attacked him. Are you going to punish me because Fujin acted so willfully even when such a big attack had happened in the village? Danzo truly was infuriated. He had thought about what happened in Hiruzen's office all the time and kept feeling as if a grave injustice had happened against him. On learning what truly happened between the Root ninjas and Fujin, he couldn't keep his calm anymore. The only reason why Torian and others were discovered was because Root was attacked. Similarly, the only reason they attacked was because Fujin was too stubborn to let them go. Considering that the Root headquarters was blown up, Danzo couldn't even fault them for wanting to return immediately. Yet, Fujin used this incident to make the situation miserable for him by giving everyone one-sided information. In fact, Torian didn't even intend to kill Fujin and would have neutralized the poison. But Fujin presented the matter as if Torian wanted to assassinate him. Hiruzen had expected Danzo to explode in this manner. It was why he hadn't called Fujin. Besides, having known Fujin for so long, Hiruzen knew exactly what he would have said. After thinking for a bit, he decided to speak in the same tone. Hiruzen said, well, it is a fact that you sent them to spy on Fujin, a council member. Just that alone makes your punishment justified, something that the clan leaders will press on. Even though Fujin ignored the situation, he wasn't wrong in asking them to come with him. He didn't attack first either. Attacking a council member under these circumstances is nothing short of treason. Besides, the attack took place inside of Konoha. And several hundred ninjas were heading towards the Root within seconds. In such a situation, cooperating with Fujin should have been your only thought. Hiruzen's words were a huge blow to Danzo, who became lost for words. He understood that Hiruzen wouldn't be budging no matter how well he argued. At the same time, he also understood that the clan leaders too wouldn't relent even if the matter was so small. He could do nothing but curse Fujin who blew up such an insignificant matter. Danzo removed the seals on the bodies of Root ninjas and began walking out. The Root ninjas followed him in confusion as they wondered what Danzo meant by being punished. As they left, Hiruzen said, Danzo, you have till noon to inform me which ninjas you will be keeping. The rest need to visit me in my office. Danzo looked at Hiruzen once, but left without saying a word. Torian and the rest were confused. After they left the room, Torian asked, Lord Danzo, what happened in the headquarters last night? Also, what did you mean by getting punished? Danzo didn't say anything until they reached the labs under Root. He informed the 5 of them what had happened. Torian and the other 4 were immediately shocked. One of them complained, That's so unreasonable. We only attacked because he had surrounded us and drawn his swords. Why are you getting punished for it? Another one added, Though this is injustice, we can take the blame and say that we did it independently and without your orders. That way, even though we will have to sacrifice ourselves, the Root will prosper. Danzo replied, It's useless. Hiruzen and the others won't relent even if you do something like that. They're only using this opportunity to take the root out. Danzo looked at his subordinates and said, even if I have to let some of you go, don't forget that you are a part of Root. Konoha will always need us to ensure that the village stays peaceful. In the future, the village will need us once again. At that time, I'll call you all back, and we will reform Root once again. Danzo's image, which was already heavenly in their hearts, improved even further. Despite facing such injustice, he still wanted to serve the village. Since he only had a few hours, Danzo spent them increasing his influence on his subordinates further. He didn't want to let Hiruzen brainwash them like he did with his previous subordinates. Danzo had little to no chance of recruiting them once again. Unfortunately, the kids kidnapped from the Land of Water were too far away. As such, Danzo didn't get an opportunity to brainwash them as well. Sitting in his office, Hiruzen wondered, what should I do with those Kiri kids? They could have stayed hidden in the Root and wouldn't have raised any questions. But if I bring them in the open, there is a chance that their identity will be leaked. If that happens, Konoha's reputation will plummet hard. He thought for a while when he suddenly had an idea. He thought, yeah, this might be the best way to deal with them. A mischievous smile appeared on Hiruzen's face. He looked at his guards and said, invite the council members for a meeting. Don't invite the civilian members. Chapter 514, Sudden Responsibility. Within minutes, Fujin, the clan elders, Hamura, and Koharu arrived in the council room. Hiruzen was already present there. Seeing that everyone had arrived, he said, since everyone is here, I will start the meeting. Today's meeting has 2 agendas. In an instant, everyone was surprised. Danzo had still not arrived, and yet Hiruzen said that everyone was present. They understood that one of the agendas was related to that. Fujin wondered, a meeting without Danzo? Interesting. Now, the question is whether Hiruzen really did something, or is it just an act, and he'll let Danzo continue as usual after staying in the dark for some time. Hiruzen said, first, about the attack on the Root headquarters. Despite searching for several hours, none of us have found anyone remotely suspicious. Considering how strict the security was, I doubt anyone could have escaped from the village the normal way. So, I suspect that the attacker escaped using reverse summoning jutsu. We still haven't ascertained how the culprit entered the village. For the near future, we will be maintaining the highest level of vigilance. The walls will be properly manned, and the number of patrol units will be increased. The Umbu can't handle these duties without any help. So, I'll need every clan to contribute 2 jounins, 7 special jounins, and 21 chunins to help in this matter. Let me know if anyone has any objections. Hiruzen scanned around the room. No one complained. Except for Fujin, everyone had participated in the search. They all knew that it was completely pointless. It was as if the attacker had disappeared in thin air. They had reached the same conclusion as Hiruzen as well. Since no one opposed it, Hiruzen said, good. Of course, we can't give up on finding and apprehending the culprit. The internal searches will continue for a week. In addition, I will be activating our spies in enemy villages. They might be our best way to understand whether any enemy is making preparations to make a big move against us. If someone is, then it'll be safe to assume that these attacks were a distraction to keep us occupied internally while they make their real move. Everyone nodded. It was the only way they had to keep investigating the matter. If there were no such movements, then it could only be assumed that someone was acting against Danzo or the Root to fulfill a personal vendetta. Hiruzen continued, now, on to Elder Danzo's matter. Hiruzen took a pause before continuing. In light of recent events, Danzo's ability to lead Root has come under question. Despite repeated attacks on Root, and even an attack on their headquarters, he didn't manage to find who the attacker was. Not to mention, our village lost 20 capable ninjas. I investigated the matter between Fujin and Root ninjas as well. He looked at Fujin and said, Fujin, though the Root ninjas were at fault for attacking you, I hope that you understand that it only happened due to the extraordinary circumstances. Elder Danzo didn't order them to attack you. If not for the fact that the Root headquarters have been blown up, they wouldn't have acted in such a manner. I hope you can forgive them. Hiruzen's words immediately made Fujin fall into a tough spot. Fujin knew that the matter was too small to force Hiruzen to punish them. However, He had finally caught Danzo in a tight spot, taking advantage of the fact that the clan leaders had too many grievances towards him. He didn't want to stop applying pressure. If Hiruzen planned on going easy on Danzo, then Fujin wouldn't back down just because he and Hiruzen had a good relationship. However, directly declining Hiruzen in front of everyone wouldn't look good either. After thinking for a bit, Fujin replied, "As long as everyone is judged fairly, I won't hold a grudge." Fujin's answer intrigued everyone in the room. Some looked at him and thought, what a diplomatic answer. He agreed to forgive them, but only under the circumstances that Hokage punished them appropriately. If he feels like they aren't punished enough, he can raise this matter once again. It ensures that we can continue supporting him in this matter. Even Hiruzen was surprised by Fujin's answer. He thought, looks like this incident really offended him. Though he relented, that's on the condition that I don't betray his trust. Sigh, this boy is getting increasingly difficult to deal with. Had it been Kakashi, he would have directly agreed. Fortunately, Hiruzen had decided to take action. Otherwise, he would have to deal with headaches from Fujin as well. Hiruzen nodded and said, "That's fair. Due to the recent events, I have decided to strip Root of its powers. From now onwards, Root won't have any authority to order or even spy on anyone. Most of the Root ninjas will be inducted into the Umbu. Only 10 Root ninjas will remain under Danzo's command. They will be responsible for maintaining what's left of the Root headquarters. That will be the only place where Root will hold the highest authority and will be a forbidden place for the remaining ninjas. In exchange for keeping this authority, Danzo will be giving up his vote in the council. He will still be invited to the council while discussing important matters, but he will no longer be able to cast his vote." Everyone's eyes widened. Even Fujin didn't imagine that Danzo would have to give up this power. He thought, looks like the bottom floors have the laboratories. That is why Danzo wants to keep it even at the cost of losing his vote. Koharu immediately said, "Hiruzen, Danzo has contributed a lot to the village. Stripping his vote wouldn't look good." Hiruzen replied, "It was his choice. Besides, my decision is final. Fujin, are you satisfied with this?" The results were already better than what Fujin was hoping for. Though Danzo still had a few subordinates, it was impractical to expect him to lose every subordinate. He nodded and said, "Yes. Thank you for being fair." The clan leaders were happy as well. While Danzo's interference had stopped after the Uchiha massacre, he had started getting more active in recent times. With this decision, he won't be able to interfere with their clans in any way. If he did, then they could raise the issue just like Fujin did. Since a precedent had been created, Hiruzen would have no choice but to act again. Hence, none of them pushed Fujin to keep pursuing the matter. Though Koharu and Hamura weren't happy, neither said anything as the two of them were outnumbered and wouldn't be able to change Hiruzen's mind. Hiruzen continued, "Good. There is another matter. Around a year ago, a certain disaster had happened, which was witnessed by some Umbu ninjas who were returning from a mission. They managed to rescue 134 orphans from the disaster. Since they weren't from Konoha, I handed them to Danzo so that they could be trained and inducted into the Root once they became qualified. However, with the current developments, I'll be taking over them as well. Instead of joining the Root, they will directly join the Umbu once they become qualified enough. Unfortunately, my hands are full and I can't keep my attention on them until then. Since they are orphans and hence would fall under civilian ninjas, I have decided that they will be placed under Fujin's care." Hiruzen's words once again surprised everyone. Apart from Hiruzen, not a single person in the room knew that 134 kids were being trained in secret to join the Root. Of course, no one believed Hiruzen's bullshit story. Just the fact that they had been recruited into the Root by Danzo implied that every one of them was talented. Fujin immediately connected the dots and thought, around a year ago? Don't tell me these maniacs continued Renjiro's mission and kidnapped more kids from the Land of Water. Hiruzen had no choice but to give them to Root. The real identities of those kids can never be exposed. No wonder Danzo suddenly became more active around a year ago. Those 134 kids meant that Root now had a future. That is why Danzo suddenly began bothering me. If he didn't have these kids, he would have stayed silent and in the dark like in the original story. That said, why does Hiruzen want to put this burden on me? I already have so little time to train. Now I have to watch over kids who were trained by Danzo and might want me dead. Besides, the clan leaders might truly see me as a threat now, as I might have to take a share of their resources. Sigh. Why can't I catch a break? Chapter 515, Welcoming Trouble with Open Arms. Fujin almost wanted to cry at how much workload he had. Unfortunately, the situation didn't allow him to even complain. He couldn't even ask why, because Hiruzen had already given an appropriate reason. Everyone was looking at Fujin. Until the day before, Fujin didn't have any subordinates, unlike the clan leaders. However, he had suddenly received an opportunity to create a force that would exceed every ninja clan in the village, which couldn't get a seat in the council, and might exceed even some of the ninja clans of the clan leaders sitting in the room. All wanted to see his reaction. To their surprise, his expression displayed some annoyance and unwillingness instead of happiness. Thoughts moved at light speed in Fujin's brain. He quickly said, I don't have any experience in watching over kids. Though I am an orphan myself, I was always busy training and never had the chance to interact much with others. Could you find someone more capable for the kids? They deserve better considering that they had to go through a disaster and then spend time en route. Before Hiruzen could reply, Shikaka said, You are underestimating yourself, Fujin. Don't worry. We have full confidence in your abilities. As Lord Hokage said, there is no one better than you to handle this job. We believe that you will do it splendidly. A smile could be seen on Shikaka's face as he thought, finally a chance. Shikaka still hadn't forgotten how much work Fujin had put him through. Even after Fujin joined the council, he had avoided taking any responsibilities. Finally, he had a chance to take some revenge. Meanwhile, Fujin thought, when the hell did Hiruzen say that? Don't put words in his mouth. Unfortunately for Fujin, Hiruzen quickly followed up, I agree with Shikaku. Don't worry. Just do your best. I believe that the kids will benefit from having a role model like you. Besides, I'll be making arrangements so that it isn't too much of a problem for you. Seeing how much both of them were praising him, Fujin was lost for words. The only way for Fujin to argue against Hiruzen and Shikaku would be to prove to the council that he was terrible and irresponsible. While Fujin didn't care what others thought of him, that went against the careful persona he had constructed, and he doubted whether he could still escape the responsibility. He could do nothing but curse the two of them. He looked at Hiruzen and Shikaku and thought, if I'm going down, I'm taking the two of you with me. He muttered, all right, if I face any troubles. Before Fujin could complete his sentence, Hiruzen cut him off and said, if you are facing any troubles or doubts or don't understand what you should do or how you should handle the kids, you can approach Elder Hamura and Elder Koharu. Both of them are very experienced in this matter. Fujin looked at Hiruzen and thought, this old fox. Is he taking revenge for me forcing him to act against Danzo? Oh well, bothering those two stuck-up old schemers isn't bad either. Fujin didn't particularly care who he was irritating as long as it wasn't he who would be irritated. Seeing that Fujin wasn't saying anything, Hamura smiled and assured, don't worry, Fujin. You can approach us whenever you want. We will help you out. Though Koharu was still upset about the threat the previous day, she nodded as well. Hiruzen and Shikaka smirked in secret. Neither Hamura nor Koharu knew what sort of trouble Hiruzen had diverted towards them. Considering the situation, Fujin nodded and said, all right, I'll trouble the elders. Thank you for looking out for me. The remaining clan leaders watched the expression with a puzzled face. None of them understood why Shikaka vouched so strongly for Fujin. As for Hiruzen's words, they assumed that Hiruzen wanted to soothe the ties between Fujin and the elders since Fujin had just gone against Danzo and threatened Koharu. Hiruzen said, with that out of the way, let us discuss the arrangements we will have to make in the village to avoid such incidents. For the next couple of hours, the council discussed what precautions they should take and how the ninjas should be distributed throughout the village to prevent such attacks in the future. Special attention was given to ensuring the safety of clan compounds, as they would be susceptible to attacks like the one that happened on the root headquarters. Fujin didn't contribute much to the discussion, and instead just watched while thinking. First they sent the culprit to find where the culprit was hiding, and now they are discussing all their plans in front of the culprit as well. They are so lucky that I don't have any plans to keep attacking. Otherwise, Konoha will be a real mess. Fujin suddenly realized something. He thought, I never had thought much about this. If one strong person in the village is upset about the state of the village, he or she can do a lot of damage to the village. Had Tsukumo taken the taunts personally, or had Orochimaru hated the village as much as he does now, both could have caused ridiculous harm to the village while staying in the dark just like how I just did. If this can happen in Konoha, there is no reason to assume that it won't happen in Phantom Haven society. I need to be careful about any differences that might arise inside the organization. Though it isn't a threat for now, it will be a threat once a few ambitious rank S ninjas are raised there. Thankfully, I apply seals on everyone. That way, at least no one will turn on me. However, I need to ensure that every kid raised there believes in the Phantom will fanatically. And I need a way to deal with or accommodate anyone whose beliefs change as they grow older. Oh well, issues for later. I'll let the future me deal with it. The meeting ended after all the details were finalized. Hiruzen dismissed everyone other than Fujin. Once they were alone, he said, Fujin, I'll need a fortnight to make arrangements for the kids and check them to ensure that there won't be any danger in the future. Fujin understood that Hiruzen was referring to any possible brainwashing done by Danzo. He nodded. It wasn't something that he wanted to deal with, and Hiruzen was undoubtedly the best person to counter that. Of course, that meant that those kids would be influenced by Hiruzen, but Fujin didn't mind that as Hiruzen had never displayed any hostility towards him. If anything, it felt like Hiruzen was taking this opportunity to give Fujin a greater power inside Konoha. With these events, his seat on the council was more or less untouchable. Even if Danzo continued supporting Katsuhiro, it was hopeless. Hiruzen said, I also wanted to discuss with you about their living arrangements. Since you'll be the one looking after them, they will need to be close to you. Fujin was immediately alarmed. He immediately said, Grandpa, there is no way I can house 134 kids in my house. It isn't that big. Hiruzen chuckled and said, That's not what I was implying. I can offer you two choices. One, you can move into the Uchiha clan compound, which is on the outskirts of the village. Fujin replied, That has a terrible past and probably not the best place to raise kids. Hiruzen nodded and said, I agree. But we don't have another large compound lying around. The other option is converting your current land into something similar to a clan compound. When Fujin was looking for a house, he bought a rather large piece of land since it was cheap due to being on the outskirts of the village. His own house only occupied a small part of it. Fujin thought for a bit and said, Though I do have some land, it will only barely fit 134 kids. Not to mention, they will need a bigger house once they grow up. Also, it'll become very crowded. Fujin had two thoughts while buying the larger piece of land. For one, Fujin didn't want the area around his house to be crowded by other houses. As someone who came from Earth, he knew how quickly a city would expand outwards, and even the outskirts would soon become crowded with houses in a few years or decades. The other reason was having the ability to build more houses for others in case he decided to build a faction inside Konoha. Since he had dropped that plan, the place was just lying idle for several years. Hiruzen nodded and said yes. However, once the kids grow up, they will want to move out and buy their own house anyway. So, that's not a concern. Regardless, I will give you 4 plots of land adjacent to your land having a similar area. The village will also fund the construction of houses and a fence. Those seals will be left to you. As for the kids being a bother, I don't think you should be worried about that. If anything, your concerns must be the exact opposite considering their past. Fujin thought for a bit and said, All right, that is acceptable. He sighed and added, Still, Grandpa, I am feeling short of time to train even after leaving Umbu. And now this responsibility. Hiruzen chuckled and said, I have a feeling that this will be good for you. So see it as an opportunity instead of a chore. You might get some surprises. Fujin thought, yeah, it would have been great if I wanted to fight for the Hokage spot. I'm sure I could raise most of these kids to be Jounins and have their unwavering support. But I don't have much interest in it. So this will just be a chore? Still, this is a good opportunity. Fujin immediately asked, Grandpa, do you know of any seals similar to the ones we use inside storage scrolls that can increase the flow of time instead of slowing it down? Chapter 516. Expanding the Territory. Hiruzen was surprised by the question. He thought for a few seconds before answering. Not that I know of. Why do you want such a seal? Fujin answered. I could inscribe such seals in a room and use it to train at a much faster speed. Hiruzen's eyes immediately widened as he understood what Fujin was thinking of. He couldn't help but think, from where did he get such a crazy idea? If such a seal exists, it will completely break the power balance in the world. A large number of Jounins and even a handful of rank S ninjas could be raised in a few years. In fact, this method could be the perfect way to raise the young kids we rescued. No one will be able to point any fingers as their ages won't match up. Unfortunately, Hiruzen said, it's a good idea. Unfortunately, such a seal doesn't exist. Even if it did, you should be very careful of it. You wouldn't want to spend your entire youth in a room. Though the idea was good, it was more effective for an organization like the Root. It wouldn't be very effective in raising a future Kage, as they will lack qualities other than strength. Fujin sighed and thought, I thought as much. Guess trying to reverse that seal is the only way. Of course, it's easier said than done. Fortunately, I don't need it desperately, as I still have more than 4 years. If I had to forcefully create it, I guess my best bet would be to revive Tobarama and have him work on it. Unfortunately, I don't know Edo Tensei, nor can I control him to do something like this. He said, all right, Grandpa. I'll continue training the same way. Fujin got up to leave, but before he could disappear, Hiruzen said, oh, I almost forgot to mention. Some of the kids have Kekkei Genkai. One of your tasks will be giving them some attention and guiding them. I want them to become elite Jounins in the future. And another task you'll have is ensuring that this stays a secret. Only clan leaders and Umbu can know of it, but you don't need to take the initiative to inform them. Without waiting for Fujin's reply, Hiruzen disappeared from the room. Fujin cursed, this old fox, he keeps giving me more tasks. He even ran away before I could ask for anything in return. Still, this isn't bad. I wanted to create a Kekkei Genkai with wind and lightning or wind and fire elements. In fact, that is my next goal after my current training is complete. Unfortunately, I never had any inspiration in this direction. Perhaps watching those kids might be helpful. I guess there is some benefit in watching over those kids. Fujin disappeared from the council room as well. He returned home and thought, before I get that responsibility, I need to create the 8 trigrams divination seal. I've been putting it off for a long time. Konoha became busy very quickly. The clan leaders were busy making arrangements to ensure that their clans didn't fall prey to such attacks. On the other hand, Hiruzen was increasing the security of the entire village and was activating the spies he had placed in other villages. At the same time, he sent a message to Jiraiya, informing him about the recent events and asking him to dig out information on anyone who could launch such a strong lightning jutsu. Meanwhile, Danzo was busy increasing his influence on the Root ninjas he was planning to let go of. He wanted to ensure that he could recruit them back as soon as he got an opportunity and didn't lose them forever like the previous Root ninjas who joined the Umbu. At noon, the Root ninjas left the labs and met with Hiruzen, leaving the Root officially. From this day onwards, Danzo would have only 10 subordinates, or rather 11, since Hiruzen wasn't aware that one of his Umbu reported to Danzo. While everyone was busy and tense, Fujin was in his basement, working with 100 clones to create the 8 trigrams divination seal by placing 2 4-symbol seals on top of each other. Since he knew the basic idea, it wasn't very difficult. He just had to get it right once. A couple of days later, a couple of Umbu appeared at Fujin's house and informed him about the development plan to develop his land and the nearby plots. Fujin checked it once and was slightly surprised. He thought, not bad at all. It looks like Hiruzen wants to keep my house at the center and develop houses on the plots next to mine. The remaining area on my land will be used to construct a training facility for the kids, and some space will be left for other community buildings that I might need in the future. He has also left a lot of land for future expansions. I wonder if he plans on diverting more kids here. Oh well, once it is done, it would almost be like a clan compound, though it'll be smaller than any clan compound. Not surprising considering that the clan compounds were built when each of the clans was at its peak. After 3 wars, their numbers have dropped a lot, so comparing with them wouldn't be fair. Oh well, whatever. Let them work, I'll just set up the seals later on. I doubt anyone would dare mess with me once the seals are up. While not many were aware of it, the ones who didn't need to think much about how many seals Fujin would inscribe in the territory under his control. It was one of the reasons why Hiruzen wanted to put the rescued kids under him. The chances of anyone spying on them and sending information to enemy villages were almost null. It made him the best option once Root was out of the picture. The work around Fujin's house continued while he continued training unbothered. He focused more on creating the seal while training his body and working on Flying Thunder God Jutsu on the side. The Wind Domain training was stopped for the time being. Around 8 days later, a smile appeared on Fujin's face as he received the memories of one of his clones. He muttered, 8 trigrams divination seal is learnt. Fujin thought, now I need to make a seal imprint and test the seal out on someone else before trying it myself. Sadly, the village is still tense. I won't be able to leave right now. Oh well, I can just continue training the other 3 techniques. My Flying Thunder God's teleportation range is increasing rapidly. I can now teleport up to 50 meters away. Unfortunately, I still need to resist the pressure from the void. Still, that is improving rapidly as well. I guess in around a month, Flying Thunder God Jutsu can be considered as mastered. Then I will only need to keep working on increasing its range. I have a feeling that even that will become easier once I pass a certain threshold. Otherwise, reaching Minato's level might take centuries. Oh well, issue for later. Time to train Wind Domain again. I haven't trained that ever since I left the village to meet Shigeki. Fujin left his house and entered the training ground. As he had expected, he ran into Naruto, who was training as well. On seeing Fujin, Naruto excitedly said, Fujin, are you finally done with your work? Fujin didn't want much distraction while he was working on the seal, so he had asked Naruto to not disturb him unless it was very important. Seeing Fujin finally leave his house, Naruto was a bit excited. Fujin nodded and said, done for now. Anyway, what's up with you? And why is your right wrist bandaged? Naruto laughed nervously and said, there were several ninjas moving around the village for the last few days. I decided to prank them. You should have seen them panic. One of them got startled and accidentally hurt me. A frown appeared on Fujin's face. While he didn't care that much for Naruto, he didn't want to see him getting bullied, especially by grown-up ninjas. The poor guy already had a rather miserable childhood. He asked, who did it? And how exactly did he hurt you? Seeing Fujin serious, Naruto immediately explained, no, it's fine. That person was wearing a mask, so I don't know who he was. He only appeared next to me suddenly and grabbed my hand very tightly. But when he saw me, he quickly apologized and took me to the hospital to heal me. He also paid all the expenses and just told me to not do that again. A weird expression appeared on Naruto's face as he said, actually, he was very polite and apologized several times and ensured that I was fine. I don't think anyone has been that polite with me. But he didn't tell me what his name was. Fujin was slightly surprised. He thought, I see. I guess Naruto just startled them. Since they were tense, they assumed it to be one of the culprits and took action rapidly. Anyway, being able to startle Umbu is good. It looks like Naruto has made some progress recently. Chapter 517, Wind Domain. Fujin said, alright, next time, don't prank a ninja when he is very busy. It's fine to prank the ones idling around though. Anyway, how many of those masked ninjas were there? Naruto said, there were 8. Fujin chuckled and said, being able to prank 2 squads of Umbu. That's good progress. Naruto asked in a confused tone. Umbu. Fujin replied, they're the ones wearing the mask. Don't prank them in the future. Their jobs are quite tense, and they might not hold back. As someone whose killing instincts were honed during his time in the Umbu, Fujin was well aware of how cold and quick Umbu could be. Pranking them was generally not a good idea. Naruto obediently said, alright, I won't prank them. He looked towards Fujin's house with some interest and asked, what is happening with your house? Are you making it even bigger? Fujin chuckled and said, Lord Hokage wants me to look after some orphan students. They'll be moving over once everything is constructed. Suddenly, Fujin had an idea. He smiled and said, once they do, maybe you can make several friends. Fujin chuckled internally while thinking, Root's training makes a ninja very antisocial and a bit robotic. While Hiruzen's brainwashing should have some influence, I doubt it'll compare to what Naruto can achieve. This guy literally talked Nagato into reviving the ones he killed. Besides, I can encourage Naruto to teach them how to prank. I'll have an army of minions to unleash on the village. I wonder what an army of talented brats trained by Root and influenced by Naruto will do to the village. While Fujin was scheming to unleash a different type of hell on Konoha, Naruto was lost in his own thoughts. Involuntarily, he asked, I am an orphan too. Can I move here as well? Fujin was caught off guard by the question. A look of surprise appeared on his face as he muttered, You want to move in here? Naruto immediately answered, Yes. Fujin thought, Now here's something I didn't think of. Fujin thought for a bit before concluding, There is no harm to it. As long as he gets along with them, it might create a good impact on him. The only issue is that he might pick up some of their jutsus. It might change his fighting style. But, as long as he doesn't learn and spam the shadow clone trick, his strength shouldn't differ by much. The only issue is the political ramifications it might have. Others might view it as me making a move on Konoha's only Jinchuriki. My influence is increasing too rapidly. I don't have the energy to engage in internal politics any more than I already have to. That said, I just gave Danzo a bloody nose. I doubt anyone will want to mess with me so quickly. Oh well, I'll just go with the flow. Naruto asked again, nervously, Can I move here? Fujin replied with a smile, I'm not sure how the kids who will move in will be. Why don't you make friends with them first? If you guys get along, I'll request Lord Hokage to allow you to move. Naruto immediately bloomed into a smile. He jumped and said, All right, I'll befriend them. Believe it. Fujin chuckled. He asked Naruto about the progress he made, and the two began discussing it. After some time, Fujin began his training. A month passed. Since the houses were being constructed, Hiruzen decided to keep the rescued kids in Umbu quarters for the time being. He also used the opportunity to interact with them regularly and instill the will of fire in them. Considering their high numbers, this was one of the extremely rare times that Hiruzen used shadow clones inside the village to do something that didn't involve combat. The situation in the village calmed down with time. However, top-level combatants like Fujin, Kakashi, and Guy were asked to stay in the village just in case something else happened. In the 23rd training ground, Fujin was standing with his eyes closed. To a normal eye, it might look as if he was just standing there. However, if any sensor observed him, they would notice a tremendous amount of chakra being emitted from his body. The chakra turned into wind and mixed in the surrounding air so naturally that it wasn't even visible. However, the tremendous amount of chakra meant that even a normal human would sense something was wrong. The few birds that still dared to live in this training ground immediately began flying away. Within seconds, the wind's Fujin release completely encapsulated everything within 50 meters of Fujin. Fujin's eyes opened. In an instant, hundreds of deadly wind blades formed in the air and cut down every tree within that range. The rocks and hills were covered in deep cuts as well. At the very next second, the winds began flowing circularly around Fujin with him as the center. Within a few seconds, a hurricane formed in the training ground as winds flew circularly at a very high speed. Fujin raised his right hand as if his palm was controlling the entire hurricane. He flipped his hand and pushed it forward. At that very moment, the tip of the hurricane suddenly moved forward while its base stayed around Fujin. The tip slammed into one of the massive ramparts Fujin had constructed when he was practicing AoE vacuum jutsus. The high-speed winds began eroding the rampart, but the rampart wasn't damaged much. Suddenly, sharp wind blades began forming in the hurricane, and every single one of them bombarded the rampart. Immediately, hundreds of deep cuts began appearing in the rampart every second. Within half a minute, the hurricane drilled through the rampart, leaving a large hole at its center. Fujin clenched his right palm before suddenly stretching all his fingers. At that very moment, the hurricane that had drilled through the rampart suddenly transformed into small wind blades and bombarded the land between the four ramparts. Thousands of small cuts appeared on the ground. A smile appeared on Fujin's face after seeing the destruction. Very few ninjas would be able to defend against such an attack. Of course, it did have the drawback of needing a very high amount of chakra. It used up half of the chakra that he had emitted in the air. But considering the devastation, Fujin felt that it was appropriate. He moved both his hands forward as if he was grabbing something. Immediately, 8 ghostly palms made of wind appeared around him. Under Fujin's control, the ghost palms swept away the debris within the wind domain and sent them flying in all directions. Soon after, they transformed into small wind blades as well before dissipating into the air. Fujin tried a few more things until he was satisfied. A grin appeared on his face as he thought, Wind Domain is finally good enough to be used against rank S ninjas. However, there are still a couple of flaws I need to look out for and one improvement I still need to make. If I go up against someone who can absorb chakra, like Kisame or Pain, then I'll just be gifting them my chakra. The only way to avoid it is by turning my chakra completely into wind blades. But no matter how efficient I am, some chakra always gets left even in the wind blades. Otherwise, the wind blades just collapse. Forming an attack purely of wind without any chakra involved is almost impossible. The only way I can think of is to improve my physique to such a level that I can replicate Guy's air punches that he used against Madara with my sword. Something similar to what swordsmen in One Piece did. That said, if my physique reaches such a level, why would I need to depend on Wind Domain? I could just pummel them to death. I guess the only way to properly counter this would be learning Senjutsu. That will make absorbing it a folly. Until then, I will just have to rely on teleporting Samahata or the chakra-absorbing Pain away. Of course, that is if I have to engage in a life-and-death battle with them. Otherwise, I can just run away. The other flaw is the amount of chakra the Wind Domain needs. I had to pour half my chakra into creating the Wind Domain just now. In a battle, I should limit myself to 10%. I can increase it depending on the battle situation. As for the improvement, I still haven't been able to create vacuum cores inside the Wind Domain. Luckily, the current destruction is pretty good already. I can leave this matter for later. Fujin stretched his body for a bit before deciding, I will pause the Wind Domain training for a long time now. And I still can't leave the village. I guess it's time to ask Hiruzen's help again. While I didn't need a reason, considering the huge responsibility he has put on my shoulders, he can't refuse. Chapter 518, Fire in Earth Combat Systems. Without wasting any time, Fujin flickered towards Hokage's building and entered his office. Surprisingly, Hiruzen wasn't in his office, and Fujin instead saw Takao, arranging some files. Takao greeted Fujin and asked, It's been a while, Fujin. Are you here to see Lord Hokage? Fujin nodded and asked, Yeah, where is he? Takao answered, He went to the Umbu headquarters for some work. Without waiting for him to be done speaking, Fujin nodded and said, All right, I'll find him there. He immediately disappeared without waiting for Takao, who continued his sentence, He will be back in a couple of hours. Unfortunately, he only spoke to the air. Takao cursed. Why do I even bother? He didn't even ask whether he could go or not, and directly left. Fujin entered the Umbu headquarters while thinking, Is he influencing those kids again? Well, whatever, that doesn't need much chakra. Finding Hiruzen wasn't difficult. As Fujin expected, he was drilling the will of fire into them. In the past month, most of Danzo's influence on them was already wiped out. Their belief in the will of fire even exceeded an average Konoha ninja's belief in it. By the time Hiruzen handed them over to him, Fujin had little doubt that those poor kids would believe in the will of fire fanatically. A few Umbu noticed Fujin, but didn't say anything as he regularly entered to meet with Eagle and was a former Umbu captain. Hiruzen noticed him as well and suddenly had a bad feeling. He thought, Why does it feel like he is here to ask something from me again? Unknowingly, Hiruzen got a bit tense. He cursed Hamura, whose idea it was to arrange rewards for the top academy student in each year. It had caused him numerous headaches over the last few years. Thankfully, Hiruzen had stopped it. Unfortunately, it was already too late to do anything about Fujin, for whom it had become normal. Fujin waited for a couple of minutes for Hiruzen to be done with the kids he was talking to and flickered next to him. Hiruzen smiled and asked, Good to see you, Fujin. Are you here to meet the kids as well? Fujin looked towards the kids standing close to Hiruzen and smiled. He answered, I'll be seeing them for several years, Grandpa. It'll be better for them to enjoy your company right now. Anyway, I need your help. Hiruzen complained internally. He didn't even pretend. He asked, "What's the matter?" Fujin answered, "Well, it isn't anything bad, but it's a bit too complicated to explain here. Also, I don't want to distract you from meeting these kids. Can you send a shadow clone with me? Preferably with at least a third of your chakra." Hiruzen looked at Fujin with a deadpan expression, but there was no change in Fujin's expression. Having already been helped by Hiruzen's clones several times, Fujin didn't even see a reason to say please. And having helped Fujin so many times, Hiruzen couldn't say no either, especially if he didn't have a good reason. Helplessly, he created a shadow clone and sent it with Fujin. Fujin and Hiruzen's clone reached the training ground. Surprise appeared on Hiruzen's clone's face as he noticed the destruction. He thought, this doesn't look like the destruction he usually causes. I haven't checked on him for quite some time. Did that wind technique he was working on improve so much? I should check up on him sometime later to monitor his progress. While Hiruzen's clone was observing, Fujin said, "Grandpa, I need your help in developing proper fire and earth combat systems." Hiruzen's clone was a bit surprised. He asked, "You're working on improving fire and earth manipulation? What is the issue you are stuck on?" Fujin answered, "I am not stuck on anything. I was thinking about developing these two natures in case wind jutsus don't work against an enemy for some reason. Currently, I have developed both of them to complement my wind jutsus. Earth helps me in defense and gives me another direction to escape when I can't resist the attack, while fire is useful in making large-scale wind jutsus even more destructive. However, if I use either of them independently, their power is very lacking. I wanted your help in developing these two natures to a level where I can use them independently in battle. I know that I won't be able to master them as much as my wind manipulation, at least in the short term. But I would still like them to be at a much higher level so that I won't be in a terrible situation in case my wind jutsus don't work." Hiruzen's clone thought about Fujin's words for a few seconds and felt that was reasonable. He himself believed in training in this manner. When it came to ninjutsu, he had mastered all 5 elements along with yin and yang release, a slew of secret techniques that were prized possessions of the proud clans in Konoha, and an array of forbidden jutsus. Fujin wanting to take a similar route was a pleasant surprise to him. He said, "That's a good decision. While improving one nature is good, you need to have a diverse skill set so that enemies can't make a plan against you like what IWA did. What ideas do you have for developing fire and earth? Tell me the jutsus you decided to learn, and I'll tell you if you could do better." Without any change in his expression, Fujin replied, "I didn't think of anything. I directly came to find you after deciding." For a moment, Hiruzen's clone was left speechless. He didn't know what to say. Due to his jutsu mastery, everyone called Hiruzen the professor. However, considering his position, very few approached him to ask for guidance. The few who did would only approach him when they encountered an issue in their training. It was like how Fujin approached Hiruzen several times before this incident to deal with a particular issue. This was the first time anyone approached Hiruzen to ask for his help without making any efforts themselves. To make it worse, Fujin said, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. It was as if he didn't see anything wrong or inappropriate in it. Hiruzen's clone bitterly wondered, what exactly did I do to deserve this in my old age? Not only do I have to look after the village and maintain peace between clans while having to deal with Danzo's mess, but I also have to teach anyone who asks me for help. What if others decide to follow Fujin's example in the future? How many clones will I need to use all the time? When will those ungrateful students of mine return and allow this old man to retire? Unfortunately for him, no one was interested in hearing about his troubles. He could only be grateful for the fact that Fujin did not spread this news around and didn't tempt others to do the same. Otherwise, his peaceful days would truly be over. Hiruzen's clone sighed and said, "Fujin, I have already said that in order to develop properly and grow stronger in the future, you need to work on such things yourself. It's fine if you face a problem and want my help, but you should work on it first yourself. Asking for my help should be when you are left with no choice." Fujin nodded obediently. Unfortunately, his words were anything but obedient as he replied, "I know, Grandpa. I have thought this through properly. I have no interest in developing fire or earth natures any further. After having spent so many years training wind manipulation, I have a feeling that I might be able to advance it far further than anyone else. And doing that will require a lot of time, perhaps even decades. In the future, I'll be busy with it, and I don't think I'll have any time left to develop fire and earth natures. So, I decided to skip the long process of developing the combat systems around them and directly ask for your help. This way, I can train those two natures to a high level in a short time and then focus entirely on wind nature. I could have thought of which jutsus to learn from the library, but I figured that it'd be best to directly ask you. That way, I won't take any wrong turns. Chapter 519, Learning from the Master. As he spoke, a smile appeared on Fujin's face. His expression and words displayed that he had full confidence and trust in Hiruzen. While Hiruzen's clone thought of a few arguments, seeing Fujin's expression, he understood that no matter how he argued, he would eventually have to agree to train Fujin. He sighed internally, accepting his fate of performing another thankless task. The reason why Hiruzen's clone relented so easily is that he understood that Fujin had a point. One ninja had limited time and energy. Mastering several elements to the extreme was an impossible task. Hiruzen, despite having trained for over 6 decades, wouldn't claim to be the best in every element. He specialized more in fire and earth release as compared to the other 3 elements. Even if a ninja learned how to use all 5 elements, they would still gravitate towards 1 or 2 elements that they would master to the limit. One good example of this was Kakashi. Kakashi was one of the few ninjas who could use all 5 elements. However, he specialized only in lightning. In addition, he was very good at water and earth, as well, even though they weren't at the same level as his lightning. But he only used 2 or 3 jutsus while using the fire element and barely ever used any wind jutsus. In Hiruzen's eyes, Fujin's decision to rely on him to directly increase his fire and earth mastery to a high level was a smart decision. The only issue was that Fujin was asking him to put in the hard work. Had he bothered someone else, Hiruzen would have been as supportive as he could be. Hiruzen's clone asked, "What can you do currently with fire and earth?" Fujin answered, "For fire, my main attacking jutsu is the Searing Migraine Jutsu, which I use along with the Infinite Breakthrough Jutsu to create a combination jutsu. I haven't used any other jutsu for a while, even though I know Great Fireball, Fire Release, 5 Fireproof, and Fire Dragon Flame Bullet jutsus as well. For earth, my main focus is on defense and evasion. The jutsus I generally use are Earth Wall, Iron Skin, and Earth Instantaneous Body jutsus. In addition, I also know Rampart of Flowing Soil jutsu and can create camps." Hiruzen's clone thought, not bad. These jutsus complement wind release extremely well. It also gives him a good base to start with. He asked, "I know you didn't plan it, but do you have any specific ideas in mind, or should I teach you what I think will be appropriate for you?" Fujin thought for a bit and replied, "I haven't thought of anything particular in fire, so I'll depend on you. As for earth, I haven't thought of much either. The only thing that intrigued me was Sachikid's ability to fly by controlling or changing weights. If I can learn that, then it'll be very helpful." The ability to fly at will was something Fujin wanted for a long time. While he could use Assassin's Rush Jutsu to stay in the air for some time, it exhausted his chakra at a terrifying speed. If he could fly like a Noki, then very few ninjas would be able to resist his wind or fire-wind combination jutsus. Hiruzen's clone replied, "That is a very convenient jutsu. Unfortunately, no one except that Sachikid knows how to use that jutsu. I can't teach it to you." Fujin was surprised. He asked in a confused tone, "We weren't able to copy his jutsu?" The Uchiha clan was famous for copying jutsus with ease, and Konoha used to have hundreds of Sharingan-wielding Uchiha ninjas. In addition, there were a few ninjas who were at the peak of the ninja world in terms of their understanding of ninjutsu. Tobirama, Hiruzen, and Orochimaru could all be considered as such. And there were several other talented ninjas in Konoha's history who didn't gain as much fame as them or died prematurely. So, Fujin expected that jutsu to have long been copied. He just guessed that no one was able to use it despite knowing it. After all, Even in IWA, only the 3 Tsuchikages were known to be able to use this jutsu. Hiruzen's clone understood Fujin's thoughts and said, "We wanted to copy it, but we couldn't. The Tsuchikages don't use hand seals while using this jutsu, making it hard for someone with Sharingan to copy it. In addition, they disguise how their chakra flows as well. So all our attempts to copy the jutsu ended in failure." Fujin sighed and said, "That's a shame. I guess I'll just go with whatever you recommend then, Grandpa." Hiruzen's clone nodded. He began guiding Fujin, starting with the fire element. For the next week, Hiruzen kept sending a clone to guide Fujin. For the first half of the week, Hiruzen had to send a clone with more than half his chakra, as he had to demonstrate the jutsus to Fujin. He reduced it to a quarter for the latter half, as Fujin was the one practicing more while he mostly monitored. Regardless, this was the most time Hiruzen had invested in training a single ninja apart from his 3 students. Needless to say, the results of investing such time in Fujin were extremely good. Merely within a week, Fujin's fire and earth elements had grown by leaps and bounds. While he still needed some more time to master the jutsus Hiruzen taught him, his fire and earth elements would end up being superior to an ordinary elite jounin who specialized in either of those elements once he mastered them. Of course, improving his skills in these 2 elements beyond that level would be difficult for Fujin, as he was entirely reliant on Hiruzen for reaching this level. However, that wasn't an issue according to Fujin. After all, with his high chakra reserves, he could just supercharge those jutsus far beyond what an elite jounin could do. Not to mention, Fujin was already a rank S ninja and had a very high mastery in wind manipulation along with several deadly techniques. Fujin continued his training the same way. The only difference was that he trained fire and earth jutsus instead of his wind domain. Konoha finally settled down as well. Danzo no longer created any problems for anyone and stayed within the root headquarters. The clan leaders finally sighed in relief. As for Katsuhiro, he lost Danzo's support as Danzo didn't see any point in getting him into the council anymore, as he couldn't use the council to revive the root. The only possible reason for Danzo to support Katsuhiro any longer was to create trouble for Fujin. However, Danzo could see that kicking Fujin off the council was pretty much impossible. It was already very difficult, as Fujin hadn't fallen for his trap and showed no signs of attempting to steal credit. Now, without Danzo himself being on the council, the difficulty rose several times. As a result, Katsuhiro was on his own. Of course, he still believed himself to be a better option than Fujin and completed the proposal and reached Fujin's office. He entered the office and saw Yasushi and Haruma, who immediately recalled the bad memories related to him. However, this time Katsuhiro restrained himself. Fujin's status in the past couple of months had undergone a massive change. While he still desired Fujin's seat, he no longer dared to openly offend him. He handed a few files and said, "This is the proposal. Hand it to Fujin and ask him to contact me as soon as he can." Yasushi accepted the files and said, "We will get it to him as soon as we can, Katsuhiro-sama." Katsuhiro nodded and left. Once he had gone a long distance away, Haruma chuckled and said, "He is no longer arrogant while talking to us. Last time he pressured us so much." Yasushi chuckled as well and said, "Of course. Fujin is a grandmaster of Fuinjutsu and is probably a rank S ninja as well. I still recall his clones scouting through the village. Even though Katsuhiro is strong, he will no longer dare to show any hostility towards Fujin." Haruma nodded and added, "Not to mention, he is already old, while Fujin is still in his teens. He will continue growing stronger." Anyway, a grin formed on his face as he asked, "How long do you think Fujin will make Katsuhiro wait this time?" Yasushi glanced at Haruma. The two immediately broke into laughter. Ever since Fujin sent a shadow clone to meet Katsuhiro after making him wait for over a month and a half, it had become something that Yasushi and Haruma joked about frequently. If it wasn't for the fact that they were still a bit fearful of him, the two would have spread the news of their meeting all over the village. Chapter 520, Dressing Down. Despite joking around, the two of them informed Fujin about Katsuhiro handing in the proposal in the evening along with some other reports. Fujin was slightly surprised. Over the last month, he was so engrossed in training that he nearly forgot about Katsuhiro. He said, I'll look into it when I visit the office this Saturday. If he tries to pressure you two again, let me know. Yasushi said, we will. He and Haruma quickly left. Fujin wondered, why did he take so long to come up with a proposal? After thinking for a bit, Fujin concluded, I guess he was assigned to several missions during the chaos that followed after my attack en route, preventing him from working on it. Oh well, whatever. I'll look into it later. Fujin put the matter out of his head and continued his training routine. With Danzo no longer in the council, Fujin didn't see Katsuhiro as much of a threat. Besides, the clan leaders owed Fujin a great favor for giving them an opportunity to deal with Danzo. Fujin doubted any of them would go against him due to such a matter. At most, they would reject the proposal. As long as he didn't push it too hard, no one would care much. Regardless, he didn't intend to let Katsuhiro have an easy time. Katsuhiro would get a taste of bureaucracy that was from a whole different world. On the next Saturday, Fujin sent a shadow clone to check out the proposal while handling other matters as well. Needless to say, he decided to handle Katsuhiro's proposal only after he was done with every other matter that had reached his office over the last couple of weeks. Katsuhiro, who was waiting patiently at his house, frowned. He thought, today is a Saturday. He didn't show up on the previous Saturday. So Fujin should have gone to the office today. But why hasn't he called me yet? Don't tell me he will make me wait for another month again. Anger flashed on Katsuhiro's face due to being repeatedly disrespected. It was soon followed by a helpless expression. With Fujin's recent fame, and with Danzo no longer backing him, Katsuhiro was left without any options. In fact, he had begun questioning whether such a proposal would help him take Fujin's spot at all. Unfortunately, he had no option but to wait. Fujin's clone only reached Katsuhiro's proposal very late in the evening. Yasushi and Haruma exchanged several glances as they understood that Fujin was purposefully doing so. While reading the proposal, a surprised look appeared on the clone's face. He wondered, that's weird. Though the proposal is good, it has a few major flaws. I can understand some of these flaws, as this would put me against the clan leaders in a very aggressive manner. If Danzo is still supporting Katsuhiro, I can understand why he would want to do this. But if Danzo was the one to make this proposal, there is no way he would leave such a big flaw. This proposal will be thrown out in a heartbeat. Fujin's clone continued reading as he said, send someone to call Katsuhiro here. Yasushi immediately dispatched a messenger. Minutes later, Katsuhiro appeared in Fujin's office. He had nearly given up hoping that Fujin would call him that day. When he finally received the message, he hurried, afraid that Fujin might run away and leave him hanging if he delayed. Of course, he didn't show those emotions on his face and maintained a stoic expression. He asked, did you go through the proposal? Fujin's clone nodded and replied, I'm disappointed. I had better expectations from you. His words surprised everyone in the room. Katsuhiro frowned and asked, what do you mean? Fujin's clone replied, if I present this proposal to the council, they will throw it into the dustbin without even giving it a second thought. Why exactly were you so restless earlier if this was all you could come up with? Katsuhiro's frown deepened. He didn't expect a dressing down when he hurried to Fujin's office. Despite being busy with the missions, he had worked hard on that proposal. Of course, the most insulting thing was that the one dressing down him was only a 15-year-old boy. He immediately retorted, Fujin, don't forget that I am still your senior, and not your subordinate. Don't think that you can send a clone to humiliate me. Fujin's clone snorted and replied, humiliate you? What would I get by doing that? The next council meeting is in a week's time. If I present such a flawed proposal, then not only will it get thrown out, but it will also be much harder to pass it in the future. Were you genuine when you said that you wanted to help civilian ninjas, or were you just looking for an opportunity to create trouble? The room became tense. No one expected Fujin to be so harsh. Katsuhiro wondered, what the hell? What is he talking about? The proposal was perfect. But why is he so confident that I messed up? He controlled himself and asked, what exactly is the issue? Fujin's clone answered, there are several issues. However, the biggest one is the location of the guidance hall. Katsuhiro immediately replied, the location of the hall is right next to other important buildings in the village, like the academy, the hospital, and the Hokage building. That's the perfect location for the hall. Fujin's clone shook his head and said, in order to construct the hall where you want, you will need to buy several dozen shops that are already in that area. What are your plans for those shop owners? Will they give up this lucrative position and move just because you want to construct a hall there? Even if you force them to move, how much will the village need to spend to buy those properties? The council will just throw out this proposal considering how expensive it will be and how much unrest forcing them off their property would cause. Katsuhiro immediately said, considering the benefits of the guidance hall, it's a sacrifice they need to be willing to make for the village. Fujin's clone immediately refuted him. The guidance hall can be made anywhere in the village. Why would they make the sacrifice just because you want the guidance hall there? Fujin's clone placed the files on his desk and said, make changes to the proposal and choose a new place for the hall that won't impact the lives of other people. There are a few more issues in the proposal as well. I'll leave it to you to find out what they are and correct them. Katsuhiro's expression became very ugly. He clenched his fists, but unfortunately, he had very little power in this situation. With Danzo no longer backing him and Fujin's reputation already exceeding his, he could only control his anger. He took back the proposal and left. Fujin's clone looked at Yasushi and Haruma and said, let me know when he brings in an updated proposal. The clone disappeared in a puff of smoke. Yasushi and Haruma exchanged glances once again. After a few seconds of silence, Haruma said, that was so cool. I am still feeling goosebumps due to what he did. Yasushi nodded and said, yeah, this was very exciting. Inoichi-sama was way too polite when compared to Fujin. His face was worth watching. Haruma laughed along with Yasushi and said, that's what he deserves for putting us under so much pressure back then. While Haruma and Yasushi enjoyed the interaction, the same couldn't be said of Katsuhiro. He could barely contain his anger at being humiliated in such a manner by someone so junior to him. Unknown to Fujin, the way he dealt with Katsuhiro resulted in him getting a couple of fans. Katsuhiro returned home and opened his proposal. The more he looked at it, the more he was reminded of Fujin's words. In anger, he punched the desk, breaking it into two, and cursed, Suzuki Fujin. I'll show you. Your seat will be mine soon. I'll create a proposal that the village would be forced to accept, and then I'll take that seat on the council. Spirited, Katsuhiro spent all night thinking about how he could improve the proposal further. Unfortunately, he was assigned a Rank S mission by Hiruzen that would keep him out of the village for a couple of months the very next morning. Fujin didn't bother thinking about Katsuhiro and continued his training. A few days later, a wide grin could be seen on Fujin's face. He broke out into a burst of laughter. He had finally completed an extremely difficult task, a task that only 2 other ninjas were known to have achieved in the history of the ninja world. After some time, Fujin stopped laughing and his expression became serious. At that very moment, he suddenly disappeared and appeared next to a pillar, with his hand on the flying thunder god mark on that pillar. He immediately disappeared and flashed next to 3 other pillars before disappearing again and again before finally stopping. With joy on his face, Fujin muttered, I have mastered the fucking flying thunder god jutsu. And just in time as well. While Fujin was joyful in his basement, another important event was happening in the village. Irika looked at Naruto and said, Naruto, perform the clone jutsu.